got that nerd rage. Nerd rage. I got that nerd rage. Nerd rage.
Welcome back once again to the Nerd Rage Podcast. I am Ryan Anderson, and joining me to my left is the man who is now officially a Lego.
Brad Learman.
Isn't that pretty cool to be a Lego now?
Hey, we both are Legos.
I know. I thought it was pretty funny. The guy who did it for us, I think he goes as the Brick Illustrator. Please go and follow the guy. He's on Twitter, all sorts of other social media. Gave me like a big bullhorn. That's probably because I talk way too much. But, you know, we are in the middle of E3 right now. And, of course, he gives you, our gamer, the video game controller.
It is awesome, man.
I was thinking of even putting it out on our Twitter, just like making it our banner.
That'd be pretty cool. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
If we can see if there's other stuff other people can do.
Yeah, and speaking of banner things, too, for our Twitter, I saw that your image that you've been cooking up there, you posted up on Instagram. That's looking really good.
It is. I think I'll still make a few tweaks to it, but yeah. I really like where it's at right now.
Always a perfectionist, Mr. Graphic Designer. I'm totally with you. And it looks good, by the way. I can't wait for other people who haven't seen it yet on Instagram or elsewhere. I can't wait for everyone to see it because you've been doing a great job with that. Speaking of other things that are coming down the pipeline that are very good, we've had a conversation with a company that... So I should bring this up. Amanda and I just picked her back up. She's now living here at our place, and it's been great. I'm loving it. But on our trip down here, though, we stopped at all these gas stations. We're getting food from all these crazy places and having a great time. And we stopped at this one gas station, and because we didn't want to just fill up on soda the whole time, I was encouraging us to get more bottled water. And I saw this one random company, never heard of them before, called Vita Nourish. And it might seem like a cheesy plug, and it kind of is, but it's only because I like their product so much. So I shout out to them on Twitter, and then they got back to me on Facebook actually later, which was weird. But then they responded back to me on Facebook, and they said, hey, you know what? Thank you for being such a big supporter. We're going to try and get some out to your market, and we're going to send you like this big case of water just for being such a good fan. I was like, all right, I'm sold on that. So shout out to Vita Nourish. If you guys have never heard of them, go get some of that awesome water. One thing I did also want to bring up is a thing about the show and the future. I know that after talking with a lot of you guys over emails, because I know you guys always like to send them to us at nerdragepod@gmail.com, I've heard from people back and forth a very two-way conversation about this, where it's one side saying, oh, I wish your show would be longer. I wish it was 3 hours plus, like when you do the big episodes where we split it like DC into one show and Marvel into another. That's always something that they're excited about, because then they probably exclusively listen to DC or whatever. And then other people were like, you should just make it shorter and do it in a different way. And I was thinking about it, and I'm putting this out to the fans. So I'm going to kind of put it to a vote, and I'm going to hear back from you guys. So if you guys send an email out to us, as I said before, nerdragepod@gmail.com. Let us know if you would like us to go a certain way with the way that we break out our content. One thing that I kept hearing from fans, and I think we might be interested in doing, is splitting the show off from the Big Talk and making the Big Talk its own show. Now, I don't know how Brad feels about this, because I'm kind of springing this on him in the middle of the show here. But I did tell you that there was something I wanted to bring up, so I just thought I'd bring it up here. Okay. So we'll talk after the show is over, but I wanted to put this out to the fans and let you guys decide. If you guys think that it's better for us to do short-form content, which clearly some of you did, because I think we brought it up on our last two reacts, the fact that our last two episodes of Nerd Rage Weekly went out only 5 minutes long and were some of our highest downloads ever. And I think we were like, oh, he's got a really short episode. Like, maybe that's the way to go. So if you guys want to see some changes, if you want to see things freshen up in a different way, let us know. give us an email or even DM us. Our DMs are always open, and we're always here to listen to what you guys have to say. So there's that. And for the big talk this week, I did want to bring up that we will have a special guest on, and we'll save it for that. But we're going to be talking about our most anticipated games with us being in the middle of E3 week here. And then next week, we're going to be talking about what were the biggest games of E3. So yeah, look for that with the big talk later at the end of the show. We're just going to basically talk with our guest about the top 3 games we've always wanted to see. So Brad, what else is new with you? I haven't really seen too much of you guys of late.
Nothing really new. Summer break, working. That's about it, really. Okay.
No, I mean, that's how it goes. Yeah, I mean, things have been just crazy here. I'm just thankful that I got this 4-day break, so we can work on some more cool stuff with the show. Like I mentioned, I'm working on all the Spotify stuff. And by the way, I actually forgot about this, and it just came to me. Our content, due to our association with Libsyn, is now being automatically downloaded onto YouTube. And I mean, it is going to be the audio from our show, but at least our stuff is on YouTube now. So if you guys want to just listen to our stuff on YouTube, cool. I'm just trying to give you guys as many ways to listen to our stuff as possible. So whether it's Spotify or whatever else we haven't tapped into yet, because I think we're pretty much everywhere, let us know, and we'll try and get ourselves on every service imaginable. But yeah, I think this week we've got so much going on, especially with DC and the miscellaneous talk, that we should just get right into it. So Brad, as we always like to say, DC, Marvel, or miscellaneous?
Let's do miscellaneous.
Miscellaneous it is. Okay, so for the miscellaneous talk, first thing I got to bring up, we're going to be talking in a little bit about all of these trailers, but the first thing I got to bring up is the new trailer for The Predator. Brad, it's one of our favorites. We always like to talk about this special movie. What do you think about the new trailer for The Predator?
Oh, man. It doesn't really answer anything, and it leaves a lot of questions. A lot of it revolving around how the hell does a Predator hybrid get that tall?
I can say that I know certain things, but I don't have the ability to disclose why. But what we know is that it's a hybrid. Now, it seemed like when I shared this with you that you are almost kind of intrigued in a positive way. Like, this seems kind of like something you'd be interested in now.
I was, and then I saw the trailer, and it just looks weird.
I agree. I honestly like the first trailer better than this one, because even though I dislike the idea of the whole period piece setting of it all, like, it felt like something fresh for the series that wasn't just like, hey, we're now gonna clone this, or we're gonna shake this up into there's just a different version of the same monster. The core thing, and I've said this before when we talked about the Predator, the core thing that makes the Predator movies work, at least in my opinion, is the idea of like, who's the hunt and who is the prey. And like, that concept, when you do that right, that's really all you need to make that movie good. And I mean, yeah, you can toy with that theme just a little bit or stretch it out in different ways. But once you start going into like, Predaliens and all this weird stuff, like, you've got to handle that really well if you're going to dip into that territory, because people are going to pick it apart like we've done to our fans' delight over, this past almost year that we've been talking about this movie. I just, unless this comes out and just really wows us, because, they make changes to these movies all the time. Maybe they goes in for reshoots just before it releases, which I think it's not until September, like September 9th, I think is when it comes out. I just don't think this movie is going to wow anybody. Like, if you thought that you might have been mad about like Alien, Covenant, or Prometheus, I think this is going to set you off even more.
Don't say that.
Okay. I won't, but I did. Anyways, let's keep moving on here with a couple our honorable mentions here. Just because we have been continuing a nice conversation and partnership, loosely at least, with Warner Brothers, I would like to give a quick shout out to the fact that they're bringing back Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes cartoons are going to be a new show that comes back in 2019. I can't wait to see it because for me, the thing that I love most about it is the fact that we're getting like the old retro kind of looking Donald Duck. I don't know how he's going to sound, if he's going to be more like the modern version, but like I grew up on like the really old school versions of the Looney Tunes, and just seeing like those character designs gets me kind of nostalgic again. Unlike the whole Thundercats thing that's got everyone up in a roar as of late. So no pun intended with that, actually, now that I think about it. But yeah, are you excited to see the Looney Tunes come back?
Yeah, I mean, watching them as a kid was really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to exactly process as an adult, but I still like those cartoons.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, whether it's for the kids or if it's for an adult crowd that, is kids at heart, so to speak, I think that's cool. I'm more than excited to see what they do with it. Let's move on into number 3. We have so many trailers to talk about this week, guys. I cannot go into all these. So I think what we're going to just do is we're just going to run through them all just real quick. And then Brad, point out which might be your favorite to talk about. And then I'll bring up mine and we'll go through that. So the first one we have is a trailer for Dumbo. Now this Dumbo apparently is a sequel to the original and it's being done by Tim Burton of all people. And it has a pretty good cast. What do you think about this one?
It's a little intriguing, but it's like the first time they've actually tried to build off of their original properties rather than just making a live adaptation of the original story. Yeah,
I'm excited to see it. I have no real one way or another with it, but I'm with you. I like the fact that they're kind of continuing on the story, not just trying to do a rehash of what we already know. Then we have the Mission Impossible Fallout trailer. This more than likely is the final trailer. And I don't know about you, but I am absolutely in love with this one. What do you think?
I'm in the same camp. I can't wait to see this movie.
Yeah. Enough said about that. Go check out that trailer. Then we have one that I sprung on you just before we got on this episode here. Bad Times at the El Royale. What do you make of this one?
I'm actually kind of excited to see this movie. The vibe is very, very weird. It has a little bit of a Tarantino feel to it.
Yeah, I was going to say the same.
And it's kind of how The Hateful Eight kind of played out.
Which I have not seen, I'll be honest. I have not seen it yet.
Oh, that is a good movie.
You know what? The thing with The Hateful Eight, and I've heard it as a good thing, but to me, it's the thing that's actually kind of steered me away from it. People said that it's so long that they actually built an intermission into it. And I'm sure it's...
I don't remember if they did or not. I can't remember.
Okay. And it might have been that weird, like, I don't know, it was like 45 millimeter or whatever cut that they did of it. Maybe that was the one that had the intermission, but I heard that and I've got it. And one of these days I'm going to watch it, but I'm just like, it's kind of like the Watchmen Ultimate Cut where I'm just thinking to myself, man, do I have the time to just sit down and go through this entire movie in one experience, And I think that's a disservice to any movie if you come in and come out, because you're going to have a different perspective going back into it than you did when you started with it. So yeah. I want to watch it from beginning to end, but nevertheless, I agree with you. I think the Bad Times at El Royale trailer looks fantastic. It's by the guy who did The Cabin in the Woods, which is Drew Goddard. I think the next thing for him after this is that proposed X-Force movie. So if it's anything like this trailer, I mean, I am all in for X-Force. Plus, I mean, he did Cabin in the Woods, so that should give you some sort of idea of what we're working with here. I was actually going to say... aside from Tarantino, I was almost going to go more in the Robert Rodriguez kind of territory with this.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I can see that.
It's kind of a blending of both those styles where it's a little like, I almost want to say it's got that Western kind of like showdown vibe to it with it. And then it's really trippy in some parts too. I can't wait to see what this turns out to be. Then we have the trailer for Halloween. Halloween is coming upon us this year, and Michael Myers is back. I cannot tell you how excited I am for this movie because it actually doesn't look like a fucking train wreck like the Rob Zombie movies were. I actually heard something today about the Rob Zombie ones that apparently there was like with the first one, there was an alternate ending that was like way better. And I didn't get the whole breakdown of it, but it just sounded like less like trippy and, fucked up and all that stuff. And that's, I don't know. I just did not like that super visceral kind of everything's got to be twisted and dark. And it just didn't feel like a Halloween movie to me. What do you think of this trailer?
I mean, I've never really been much of a Halloween fan, so
okay.
Seeing the trailer, it was all right, but I don't know if I'm as giddy as all the other I guess hardcore more informed fans of the franchise.
Fair enough. I will say two things about this. One, I'm a little concerned about how they quote unquote correct the timeline, because we've seen other movies where Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, is kind of dealing with the aftermath of the first movie where it's H2O, or the second movie. This basically retcons all that and says there was only the first Halloween movie and then there's this. So she's been waiting for, let's just say hypothetically 40 years for Mike to come out of prison just so that she could basically kill him. And I think there's this cold-blooded revenge look in her eyes and the way that she's portrayed in this trailer that I'm really sold on. But there's a part of me that feels like, and maybe it's me just being too critical here, but we kind of got that already with H2O. So I already know that she's gunning to kill her brother, but it's like, I don't know. I kind of want something a little more than that, but that's my only real critique here, because the styling of this, because we got John Carpenter I think executive producing this movie, so it feels very much in tone with the original and what they were doing there, plus little things in there, just like when he's being chained up in the prison yard, this being Michael Myers, they have this really trippy looking red and white checkerboard pattern in there that I don't know what its specific purpose is, but the way that it's shot, the cinematography of it all just really looks like the chess game that is, these kind of movies where it's like the killer versus the final girl, as they always say. So I don't know. I'm just really excited to see what they end up doing with this movie. It could be a complete shit show. But Blumhouse, the one who's producing it, they've been behind really good movies that are low budget but still somehow have that bigger budget feel to them. So I can't wait to see what they do with Halloween. Speaking of bigger budget and what could possibly be in shambles, we have Bumblebee. We got a trailer for a new Transformers movie. What do you make of the Bumblebee trailer?
It's unneeded. It doesn't really... I watched it and it's just kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. This girl is not afraid of Bumblebee at all, which is extremely weird.
Well, okay. Two-parter on that. I'm going to say one, she could be. We just haven't really seen it expressed through that one trailer. And two, she seems like a loner who kind of keeps to herself, so maybe she's more curious than anything, but she's still fearful. Because you kind of see, when she's under the vehicle, looking up at what's going on here, a fearful look in her eyes, but I don't know. She seems more curious as to what's going on with this weird robot creature, whereas maybe someone else probably would have bolted immediately, what the fuck is this, and then just darted. But I don't know. I really don't know with this. I've heard so many people who claim to be quote unquote Transformers lifetime fans and all that stuff say this is going to revitalize the series, and part of it I like. I like the idea of it being more of a one-on-one, human and car kind of moment. They call back to Bernie Mac's dialogue from the first movie, where it's the boy in his car, it's a special thing and all that. And I think that's cool. Which, I mean, it's a girl in her car, I guess. But nevertheless, though, I still think that there's something interesting about that, man and machine kind of bonding moment thing that they do. And I think they do a good enough job of it in this trailer. We do get to see Starscream, which I think is cool. They do a really good version of him, or at least they try and make him look good in this trailer. But again, it just seems like kind of another Transformers movie. The design feels a little bit more 80s. We get to see John Cena in it, of all things, which I don't know why they needed to put John Cena in this movie.
He's going to be the next Rock, man.
That's like, telling me when Hulk Hogan used to be like in a lot of movies in like the 80s and all that stuff.
Commando.
Yeah, exactly. Or yeah, all that. To have him go from that and then be like, oh, who's also up and coming? Macho Man is going to start being in movies. I'm like, it's still like, it's cool to see people that you watch wrestling do another thing in media. But like, I don't really think that John Cena, for all he's good for, is the kind of person I want to see in a Transformers movie, if that makes sense. I feel like the Rock is everywhere too. I actually didn't even bring up, there's a new trailer for the Rock movie where he Skyscraper, and I'm just,
it looks really boring.
It's just Die Hard. He's a paraplegic Die Hard
with one leg.
That's it. That really is it. I mean, yes, the building's more high tech, and he's got a family to save inside the building instead of just his wife. But really, it's Die Hard. And I think it was Frosty over at Collider was even talking about like he has mixed feelings about it on one of his tweets, and I think they're gonna start screening the movie this week. And I don't know even if I got a free one, I don't know if I'd even go and see that one, to be honest.
If The Rock says this is just the wrong guy in the wrong place, I'm gonna flip.
He'll be like, I'm the right guy in the right place, and just flip it on its head. Ooh, yeah. I don't know. Anyways, that's a trailer I didn't think we were going to talk about, but we did. As far as Transformers goes, I think that them keeping it more on the one-on-one kind of relationship story is enough, at least, to get me to buy into it. Because either it's one of two ways that you can go with it. You can make it the kind of personal story situation, man and machine, or you can do it where it's just this big clusterfuck of technology where it's just like magic space worms crashing through buildings and like all that stuff that we got in, what was it, Transformers 3, and just make it a big CGI blowout. And I'm kind of tired of the CGI blowout, to be honest, so I'm curious about Bumblebee, to say the least.
Don't say that to James Cameron.
I don't have many good things to say to James Cameron right now. But that's on a DC side of things. So anyways, continuing on though, or at least continuing with the Bumblebee thing, we have the announcement that Transformers, the sequel that they were trying to set up for it, I think they even had a date peg for it, which was going to come in like the next year or so. It has now been shelved. So do you think that this is the last chance for Transformers to be a viable option? Or do you think that after Bumblebee, they just straight up reboot the entire franchise?
I think they just shelve Transformers for a while.
Yeah. I mean, if this doesn't work for them, I think that they're going to go that whole Hasbro, G.I. Joe, mix it with, Mask and all these other like ROM Space Knight. We're just going to find a way to make this weird shared universe, which I think will go belly up if they don't, focus on the small stuff first before they go big. But yeah, that's really my whole big thing. Whether you're DC, Marvel, or whoever, you've got to take it slow and build for your success. You can't just go in and like, we got a universe, and then just try and make 3 different properties come together in one movie. And yeah, that is kind of a slight at DC, and I'm willing to admit that.
Well, not that, just like the Dark Universe with the Mummy and stuff.
Exactly. Perfect example. Yep. Trying to tell everyone, like, we've got Mummy, we got Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and we're going to probably do a Wolfman and a Creature from the Black Lagoon. Chill. Get one movie right. Don't even talk about it being connected. Actually make it a surprise for the fans. Be like, oh, yeah, and like, here's G.I. Joe, and he's one of the command units. Oh, my God, what if they say that John Cena is one of the G.I. Joes in this movie?
That would be kind of funny, and it would still not have the desired effect.
He has a G.I. Joe haircut in this movie, and he's playing the army guy. Oh my God, it just came to me. Maybe
that's how they tease it.
I don't
It's
want it to
universe.
happen, but I kind of want to see it now that I'm just thinking about it in my head. Like, it sounds so bad. I kind of want it now. I really do. So we'll see if that actually happens. Let's move off Transformers. We have 2 more trailers, one of which being the trailer for Mowgli, which I told you about this. I don't know if you've seen it yet or no.
I have no interest in watching that.
Okay, so for those who don't know, essentially it's the continuation of the Jungle Book story as Mowgli kind of tries to become a man and all that stuff. It's still him as a young boy, essentially, though, and dealing with everything that's going on in the jungle. But this one is actually being done with Andy Serkis at the helm, which is why I think this motion cap looks really good on this. But I don't know that I needed to see this, and I'm a little concerned how well this is going to do in the box office, unless Warner Brothers, who is doing this unlike Disney, can kind of trick people like, this is basically the sequel to that movie. If they can't do that, I don't think this is going to do well at the box office.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. And then lastly, because I always like to save the best for last, we've got the Lego Movie 2, the second one, which... ridiculous name, but it's what you'd expect from the Lego Movie. Great cast, looks hilarious. Chris Pratt just prattling it up on screen again, which I'm all for that. February 2019 is when it's going to drop. What did you think about this trailer?
I didn't see it. Shh.
You didn't see it? Oh wow, I thought you. Oh okay. Your secret's out, man. Well, I will say that this is probably my favorite trailer, only maybe behind Mission Impossible and Halloween, just because I had so much fun, like unexpected fun with the Lego Movie the first time around. We had that. Actually, there was the Wreck-It Ralph trailer, which I don't know if we mentioned that one on the last one or not, but Wreck-It Ralph was breaking the internet is also another one that just, there's something fun and magical about these movies that they just have a lot of heart to them, and they're just a lot of fun to go and see. Did I talk about the Wreck-It Ralph one last time or no?
Nope.
Okay, well, what did you think of the Wreck-It Ralph one, since we're all in trailers here?
It looks pretty good. It looks pretty fun.
Like, I know Amanda's all about the Disney Princesses one, and I specifically sent that clip to her just because I knew that would really get her to go like, ah. But I do think it's fun. Like, they even they're all about their marketing and their advertisement of things, and I really thought that it was just such a Disney plug to have Marvel and all the Disney related companies in the background, and just having that Penelope Sweets or whatever her name is, the little girl, just like get awestruck over all the Disney properties, because of course she would. You know, that's Disney trying to self-promote itself. But the rest of it I found to be a really good trailer. Also, Amanda is giving me the stink eye from across the studio as I mentioned her talking about the Disney princesses. So, yeah. She's waving to me now. All right, let's keep on going off of trailers here and move on to our number 2 talk, which is the comings and goings of a lot of the miscellaneous in Hollywood here. So first one I want to bring up is that we have Jamie Foxx going to play Spawn in the upcoming Spawn movie. Does this one sell you or no?
Yes.
It does. And why?
Simply because I think Jamie Foxx is still somewhat of an underrated actor.
Okay.
He was good in Django Unchained. I still really liked him in
Amazing Spider-Man 2. No, you're talking.
I forgot he was in that movie.
You're talking about Collateral, right?
Yes, that's a great movie.
That Collateral at the time was the one movie that because Michael Mann came in and they were talking about it because my grandfather and I were a part of Public Enemies, and Michael Mann still had Collateral kind of in his mind, and he was talking with us about that production and all that stuff when we were behind the scenes and in the auto department, because my grandfather's car is in Public Enemies as well. And so if you ever watch Public Enemies, and there's a whole thing with Christian Bale's character who's trying to go after Johnny Depp's character, and they have like the old timey switchboards, and there's a scene in particular, kind of in the middle of the movie, where they say the DeSoto, and there's these guys watching from down the street this DeSoto that's way down at the end of an alley, and it's all kind of silhouetted out in the darkness, and that's my grandfather's car. And then the bad guy runs into it, and then he kind of takes off, but he's in my grandfather's car, and it's a really cool thing. But fun fact for all of you who didn't know that about me and my little stint with Hollywood here. But it's really cool that we get to see this from Jamie Foxx, though, because I thought he was great in Collateral too. Do you like any of his other work, or do you think that this is just him slowly kind of building up his resume and, you know, getting that next big role that's going to propel him further?
It's kind of a combination of both. I just like Jamie Foxx in this role. I think he can really play the character Spawn well.
See, okay, this is my one issue with it. And yes, I'm going to say that I like Jamie Foxx, but I didn't really love him in Amazing Spider-Man 2. He was okay as the bumbling guy.
It's not his fault.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't his fault. But I do like a lot of the movies he's been in, whether it was his 90s stuff when he was in kind of the, you know, the girlfriend-boyfriend kind of drama stuff, and then he kind of evolved into the real actor that he is today. I've always liked his work, even his music career. But when it comes to this, I'm a little concerned more about the movie itself, rather him playing it, because with Spawn, the way that they're setting it up, at least the pitch that they've described so far, is that Spawn is basically going to be a secondary character in this universe. So it's going to be the people on the ground who, I think some of our fans who are like DC guys and all that, there's a good, I'd say maybe like handful of tales that exist. Even some animated stuff, like in the animated series, I think there was one that was all the criminals of Gotham kind of talking about who the Batman is in Batman the Animated Series. And you don't really see Batman a lot in that episode. It's kind of how the people on the ground describe what they think of this shadowy figure that exists out in, you know, out in the crime alley or wherever. And that's kind of how they're pitching Spawn for this one. It's not about, you know, getting to know the man who would become Spawn and how he has to deal with his suffering and his powers and all that stuff. It's the people on the ground dealing with day-to-day threats and how they view this shadowy figure off in the catacombs, so to speak. So I don't know how I feel about that. It's definitely a fresh take because we don't get a lot of that these days. But I don't know if that's what the, you know, superhero hungry fan base is looking for. Like, I think they want to see something more akin to what Marvel or DC would put out, give or take your personal feelings on those companies, rather than like, oh yeah, there's a superhero movie, but there's a superhero that you might see for maybe like 10 to 15% of the movie. Do you think that's a formula that could work here?
I don't see it being likely.
Yeah.
You know, but we could be surprised and it could be really good. But
exactly.
Again, it's too far out. The movie hasn't even shown a trailer. So
yeah, we're going to need a trailer for this one for sure. Yeah, I agree. Okay, continuing on though, with people coming and going, we've got, unfortunately, Andrew Lincoln is stepping away from The Walking Dead as of season 9. So do you think that this is a good call, a bad call, or, you know, where do you stand with Walking Dead at this point?
I think it's a good call.
For him or for the show?
For himself.
Okay. And why?
I think he's a good actor. I think there's way too much that he could accomplish.
Yeah.
Being chained down to just one TV show. You know, regardless of however popular the show is, how much you like it, Walking Dead is kind of running out of steam at the
Agreed.
moment. I know the Fear the Walking Dead is maybe doing a little bit better, but
I like Fear the Walking Dead. I really do.
Yeah, but I think in general, I think the franchise just kind of like steamed out. I think it's just running on fumes.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're on their 9th season. Like, eventually this sort of thing was going to happen. I mean, they went from being this, like, near global phenomenon to, like, well, okay, how many times are we going to see zombies show up. And that's my biggest problem with, and again, I get that there's Walking Dead fans out there who can eat this stuff up for comic book page after comic book page. But I really think in a television episodic format, they need to come to some sort of realistic conclusion, whether it's, okay, we are the last people that are going to survive in this zombie-filled world because we can't take these on, or it has to go the other route, which is we finally found a cure and we're going to finally win back the day and we're going to start taking back the world. This whole, like, you know, we're just going to hide in another set of houses and fight off some other guy who has evil intentions to kill us while zombies are also killing us. It just becomes kind of ho-hum after a while. You know, I don't know. Do you feel kind of the same way, or would you like them to keep doing what they've been doing?
I honestly, I think they need to, like, shelve it for a year and then kind of reconfigure what they actually want to do with the series.
Okay. So are you saying more like the Game of Thrones thing where they're like, we're not going to have a season this year, come back the following year?
Just in general.
Okay.
They've run through a lot of the comic book stories. I know there's one major plot line they haven't touched on yet, but other than that, I mean, they're just running out of steam, man. Yeah. They're running out of, like, things to make the show compelling. Maybe
they should do what Game of Thrones did. Game of Thrones is going to do the prequel, and it's going to set it 1,000 years back from what we currently have.
Fear the Walking Dead kind of serves that purpose.
Well, I mean, they're the side story. They're just the other half of the world that's experiencing kind of the same problem. I was gonna go in the opposite direction and go like, well, if Game of Thrones is setting it 1,000 years back, we should set 1,000 years in the future. Like, how many people are still left in this zombie apocalypse? Odds are it's some descendant of Rick's, and he's just still fighting, and nothing's been solved. They haven't won anything. They're just still killing zombies 1,000 years later. But that's just my biggest problem with it, because like every other zombie tale, and maybe that's what makes this franchise unique, like they just find a way to overcome the odds and finally, you know, get a cure. Even if you don't like World War Z, they found a cure in that movie. They found a way to overcome the big obstacle. And like the big obstacle from season to season with Walking Dead is like, you know, who's the guy with the big bat, or who's the guy with the machine gun, or who's the guy with the eye patch who's going to also make our life a living hell. And I guess that's fun, but after 9 seasons of that, it's just like, all right, I just get, it becomes ho-hum in my mind, and that's, yeah. Enough said about that. Moving on with other people coming and going here, we've got Val Kilmer, of all people, coming back to Top Gun 2, which is subtitled as Maverick at this point. Do you want to see Val Kilmer back as Iceman, or do you think not the best call here?
It depends how large his role is. I would like him just to kind of like have maybe like a short interaction, or, you know, because Iceman's not really like I guess the quote unquote nemesis of Maverick anymore.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So it would be cool to still see him in the movie, but, you know, not in a like huge role where it kind of takes away from the focus of other characters.
Right. Because I haven't watched Top Gun or Days of Thunder, like these Tom Cruise movies of that time, in quite some time.
You've never seen Top Gun?
No, I said I haven't seen it in quite some time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I still want to see Days of Thunder again, for multiple reasons I won't go into here, but like there's some really good Tom Cruise movies that I haven't watched in a while, and I started seeing them crop up on Amazon Prime Video. So, you know, maybe with this 4-day weekend I've got here, I might check into some old school films. But Top Gun is a good movie, but I just don't know that if I need to have Maverick come back. Like, part of the problem is Val Kilmer, and not in like a I don't like the guy kind of way. It's just that, well, first of all, I made a really sad error on my part. I was going through old photos of stuff, and I was like, yeah, how is Val Kilmer doing? Because the last I remember, he had been looking a little out of shape, and, you know, then I had been reminded that he had a cancer scare, and now he looks very thin. And my concern now is, if anything, I want to see him bulk up a little bit, because I don't know if that guy looks like he should be paired up with Tom Cruise anymore, because Tom Cruise, that guy seems like he's almost ageless at this point. Val Kilmer, unfortunately, not so much. The test of time is kind of catching up with him. So either, bulk the guy up or make him like, I don't even know how I'd put it. Maybe like a Karate Kid thing where it's like he's now just the mentor to somebody else and have him be like the rival to Tom Cruise's Maverick character, something like that. I don't know. I'm sure better minds than myself are working on this, but I'm with you in the sense that I just don't want them to put Maverick out in front because I don't feel like he poses that sort of, threat to him, I guess, if that makes any sense. How do you see it? Do you want someone to kind of be that Iceman kind of role, even if Iceman isn't as predominantly featured in this film?
No, I'd like them to kind of make their own character, or at least make their own different interpretation of some other, rival character of some sort. Yeah.
I wanted to actually go kind of like the new generation without coming straight out and saying it. But the problem is I think with Tom Cruise in the lead role, it's going to be hard for them to get him to take a second, or take a back seat essentially to someone else who's going to kind of carry the franchise forward. Should there be a third Top Gun movie in your opinion, or no? Should this be the last one?
Let's pump the brakes on that there.
I'm with you. I'm with you there too. I honestly don't think this movie even needs to be made, but if they're going to do it, just make it good. That's all I can say. Continuing on with our comings and goings here at number 2, we have the casting of the grown-up version of the Losers Club from the It movie. Do you like anyone in particular in this cast? Because we have a whole bunch of big names, and we're not going to go through the entire list. You guys can all check it out online. But is there anyone who stands out to you in a big way about the It Losers Club cast?
If I recall, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was cast.
I don't believe that was on the list. I'll pull it back up here. But why did that one particularly stand out to you, though?
Let's see. Oh, no. Okay, no, James McAvoy. That was it.
McAvoy, yep. McAvoy's in it.
McAvoy
I do know
and
that.
Hader.
And what was that?
McAvoy and Bill Hader.
Yeah, and Bill Hader was going to be mine. I thought that would have been a cool one, too. But yeah, so I'm very excited to see what they do with this movie. I will say that Jessica Chastain is just perfect casting, too, by the way. In the back of my mind when they were like, oh, yeah, we're going to be setting up for a grown-up Losers Club, I was like, oh, she'd be perfect for that. And then, sure enough, other people kind of got in and said their own 2 cents, and then lo and behold, she's the first one that they cast. So, yeah, I am very much ready for this. They were saying a whole bunch of other names, too, when they were, putting it together. At one point, I thought that, I forget his name, was Jaden, who I think is the older brother, that he could have been played by Dane DeHaan, and I was thinking that would have been a really cool one to do too. But I like what they put together. I mean, a lot of these kids, obviously, they did a good job for their movie, but the adults are probably going to bring it in the next movie because that's just a stellar cast. So are you excited for this movie, or do you just like what you're seeing with this cast?
I just like what I see with the cast.
Did you enjoy the first one or no?
To be honest, I never watched the first one.
You didn't? Oh, dude, you should see it. It's so good. I was surprised. I know Amanda has her whole thing about clowns, but I like that movie so much. I was almost going to try and drag her to see it just because. I mean, I was genuinely surprised. The period of it all, it just, man, and it scared me to no end, and in a good way. But that's enough of that, I'll say. Then we have one more coming and going, and that is that Liam Neeson, of all people, has now been added to the cast of Men in Black, the reboot that they're doing with Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth. Do you think that Liam Neeson joining Men in Black, this reboot, has you more excited, or are you still kind of on the fence with Men in Black at this point?
I'm on the fence. I don't see the appeal that this movie has compared to when it first came out. I don't see Liam Neeson playing a somewhat comedic character. I think he's going to be kind of deadpan character, and then like Tessa Thompson is going to be like the comedic relief. I'm not sure.
See, if I'm guessing on this one, I think honestly you're going to have Tessa Thompson kind of playing the straight-laced, by-the-book character, because she kind of did that to an extent in Ragnarok already. And then you'll have...
Are you kidding me? No way.
What?
No.
As Valkyrie, she was very... Well, I mean, she wasn't 100% by the book, but she was like no nonsense, I guess, is where I was going with that.
She was a drunk.
Well, yeah, but... I don't know. I still think she was just like, we're doing this my way or we're not doing it all. And that's what I mean by like no nonsense. So in that sense, yes, she was a drunk, and yes, she could be a bit of a free spirit at times too. But I still feel like if she put her mind to it, she was just going to see it through. Whereas Thor, played by Chris Hemsworth in that movie, is very much like whatever. I don't care. I'm just here to get myself back to get my hammer or whatever. And like, that's like, I kind of feel like that's where it's going to be like, he's going to be the Will Smith character in this movie, where he's just kind of like, yeah, I don't know what's going on, but throw me into the mix and I'm ready for anything. And I think that's how they're going to paint it. And then I'm guessing, like, if you remember from the original movies, there was Rip Torn's character played, who was Agent Zed, I think was his name. And I think that's who they're casting Liam Neeson for.
Oh, okay.
That's my guess, and I could be totally wrong on this. It could be the exact opposite thing with Chris and with Tessa, but this is how I'm seeing it, and I think that it would play to all these three actors' strengths to go in that particular route. But we know very little about this movie at this point. But I'm excited for it, even though I don't think we need a Mission Impossible or Men in Black movie. So, do you want to see more of this, or you're just like, I'm kind of done with Men in Black?
It might be a nice movie to watch on Netflix.
Yeah, it's a Netflix exclusive. We'll see. But yeah, I think that's pretty much enough with all the comings and goings. Let's get to our number one, and it's pretty much Disney / Star Wars related. So the first thing I want to bring up is we have a continuation of the conversation with all the Comcast and Disney nonsense that's been going on. So to start off, are you excited for Comcast to take it, or do you want it to be in Disney's hands at this point for 21st Century Fox?
Absolutely not.
Not for who?
I do not want Comcast to get its paws on this stuff.
Okay. Well,
because I know Comcast is making more of a play for like the TV, like the broadcasting property.
Oh yeah, as you would think Comcast would, yeah.
And like, and I think I mentioned this before, the rights that that Fox has for all of the Marvel characters technically would revert back to Marvel Studios.
I've heard that, but it's not been confirmed. So I mean, yes,
there's like a legal loophole of some sort. But even if that were to plausibly happen, Comcast would make pain for that even to go through.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I think the idea that, the Marvel characters would revert back and all that stuff, it still becomes a complicated issue for Disney if they take it, because if Disney, let's just say Comcast wins it out and like the Marvel characters somehow revert back, how do you explain the situation with the Fox TV properties, like having The Gifted, for example, which we just saw some images that are coming for San Diego Comic-Con, and they slapped a big whole The Gifted banner on the side of like a city bus or whatever, and it looks really cool. But what do you do with all these Fox-related properties? Are they going to now be on some sort of Disney network? Do you put them on Hulu, Netflix, something like that?
You can keep it on Hulu. I mean, it's in terms of like continuity. I mean, that's just all multiverse stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm honestly just worried no matter which way it goes, because honestly, you take it in one direction and it's, it's going to show up on Hulu or Netflix. But I just got used to the idea of watching things on Fox because it was just so convenient, especially through Hulu. Now you're going to be at this point where it's, I don't know, is Disney going to have its streaming network up by then? Or Is there going to be an easy way to watch these shows? And I mean, there's so many little details in this mix up that haven't really been confirmed. What we do know now is that Comcast has made a bid of $65 million in cash, or sorry, $1 billion in cash for the properties, which that's just crazy even saying that. And then if Comcast does win this, they get, Disney gets a $1 billion plus kind of like break out of clause settlement out of it, because they actually had agreed, I think back in November of last year, that, yep, this was all going to happen. It was just a matter of time. We're going to get to the summer and done deal. But with Comcast coming in and being like, we're all in, here's all the cash you could possibly want. This is your money. No payment plan, nothing like that. You know, it's causing them to reconsider. And frankly, if you put $65 billion and pushed it up to my place, I'd reconsider too. And it looks like July 10th is when they're going to kind of reconvene and make a final decision as to who gets what and what they're going to do with it. But yeah, going back to our conversation before, because we talked with Jake and Tom about this. Now, I think it was Jake who said that he was all for Comcast getting it, and then Tom was more like you, where he was like, I would rather have Disney get it. What do you think the perfect scenario would be out of all this? What is the best thing, not just for the fans, but for even just the casual enjoyer of these properties?
That Comcast doesn't get their mitts on them.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
I honestly believe that. I don't think if Comcast were to make movies from these properties, I don't think they would do well.
I guess you're right.
Comcast has a lot to do with NBC, correct?
Yeah, the whole Universal Studios. Yeah,
I don't. Universal doesn't put out as many good movies as it has in the past, and I don't trust their movie making judgment at the moment.
Yeah, and you know what? I will say this: there is something about the quote unquote Disney magic of it all, where they put their stamp on something and it just sells. And kudos to them on a marketing standpoint, all that stuff, but eventually, at least in my mind, the bubble has to break somewhere. Like, you can't always get 100% out every time. Like, we've seen it now with Solo and with The Last Jedi. Now, you could be like, oh, yeah, well, it's Star Wars. It's definitely going to be a knockout of the park success. Like, how many Marvel movies are there going to be before someone goes, well, that one wasn't as good, and then all of a sudden you see the cracks there? I mean, I like the idea of the diversification of everything, whether it's we're talking gender or we're talking race or anything, or even just the diversification of just overall properties. I like the idea that there is a competition in the marketplace where you can have Fox have their X-Men movies that are Marvel based. Sony has theirs. And I know that's slowly going away as, unfortunately, Sony kind of rises to the top and everything falls to the wayside or gathers around the Disney mindset of how to do things. But I like the fact that we can have, a dark Marvel film over at this studio, or we can have the light and colorful ones right there at Disney, and everyone can be like, those are the best, and all these other ones are shit. But at least you can say that there's a comparison between the two. You can go like, oh yeah, well, at least we were able to get a Venom movie, because I guarantee you would not be getting the same level or volume of movies that, some of these characters might not ever see the light of day. Like, the odds that we could ever see Venom in a movie, if, things had been handed over to Disney sooner, might not have ever happened, whether that's to your liking or not. Because I know some people are like, why do we even need a Venom movie in the first place? And that's a great point too. I'm totally with that. It's a very tricky thing. And I can totally understand the idea that, okay, Marvel is going to just give you A+ every single time. But what happens when Marvel doesn't? If Marvel starts hitting this skid, hypothetically speaking, where they just aren't doing it anymore for people, like all of a sudden everyone wants to go dark with their superhero movies. They want to go kind of Nolan with it all and make everything like The Dark Knight. What happens to Marvel? Like, does Marvel change with the times, and do they get better, or do they just like start losing big time at the box office, and then you just don't get a lot of Marvel movies?
Well, I think Disney will have a better. They will have better judgment on what kind of tone their movies will take.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily like the quote unquote the Marvel formula, so to speak. And most of them have more of a upbeat tone to them.
They do.
Guardians of the Galaxy kind of being the extreme versus Captain America's kind of more serious tone kind of thing.
Yeah.
In terms of dark movie, I don't necessarily think the characters that we are introduced to right now have the potential to have a kind of like a darker movie to be made.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, like that's all stuff that Marvel may say, like, maybe it would be a good choice to make a dark Black Panther movie, or let's make a Spider-Man movie like dark, have him like go through like a turbulent
which in my opinion he should. Spider-Man should have dark moments, but I know that the fan base wants happy-go-lucky Peter Parker who doesn't really have to deal with problems, or if he does have to deal with problems, he gets over them very quickly, and I've made peace with that, and that's fine. But I don't know. And maybe this is just coming from my perspective. Maybe the rest of the world feels differently, and I've, again, made peace with that too. So we'll see. And I want Comcast to have it only for the diversification of it all. I'm not saying that they're all going to be successes. I'd be even surprised if they got 1 out of 3 a year. Like if they put out, let's just say, another Deadpool movie, the X-Men Dark Phoenix movie, and New Mutants, and only New Mutants was the good one. In my mind, that's still them getting a New Mutants movie made that would never get made over at Disney, and that to me is a win all in all, even if the other two are unfortunate, negative byproducts of the system. I don't know. That it's a really tricky thing because, yes, you could look at it as 3 A pluses, or you could have 3 A pluses and then another studio who creates 1 A and maybe 2 B minuses or C's. And I don't know. I would just rather have more than less as a whole, but that's me. So, as interesting as that has all been with Disney, and unfortunately Disney might be a bit of a loser in that regard, depending on how things go. We do have some follow-up news in the world of Disney and all of their properties. We mentioned just a bit ago about Boba Fett, or about Star Wars, but we have a Boba Fett movie that's apparently coming now, despite the fact that Solo has tanked as badly as it has. Do you want to see this Boba Fett movie, which apparently is going to have James Mangold, the director of Logan, behind it? Do you think that this movie has the chance for better success than Solo, or is Star Wars in a place where it needs redemption?
As long as Kathleen Kennedy has zero influence on the movie, I think it'll be good.
It's so hard because I don't hate Kathleen Kennedy by any means, and I know
I don't hate her either, but her movie choices for the Star Wars franchise as of thus far are poor.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. It really is, because I know that there is the perspective by her to incorporate more of a female presence, and as of this week, we found out that because of some of those choices, and not that it's like quote unquote her fault by any means, that people throwing sticks and stones verbally, obviously, over the internet at Rosemarie Tran, I think is her, or wait, Kelly Marie Tran, who played Rose. It caused her to just completely leave social media because she was just being attacked so viciously. I even heard at one point that she was getting death threats, which is absolutely ridiculous. And no one, and I mean no one, I don't care what they're doing, no one deserves that. And she definitely was not one who received or deserved that treatment at all. I'm honestly embarrassed as a Star Wars fan that there's people like that treating her that way. Despite our, the differences, like Brad and I, we may be good friends, but we disagree on that Last Jedi movie. And there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. But to go to such ridiculous lengths to belittle characters. I actually thought Rose was a bad part of that movie. I even went on Twitter and I said that I thought her sister had a more valuable role in that movie than she did, but I didn't hate her by any means. Her character was added in a way that felt kind of, less than spectacular. Like it was almost like it was being force-fed into the film rather than like something that was natural and deserved to be there, like her sister's character. That being said, I still love that movie, and I would tell everyone to go and see it, and I would never pick her apart in a way that says, oh, you need to go and tell her that she needs to go, whatever herself. And like, it's terrible. And no one deserves that. She's just doing her job. Like, imagine if you walked into your job every day and people were like, you know what, you should just go and kill yourself or something like that. We're tired of how you do the thing that you do. Like, you're taking direction from someone else. It's not like she walked into her job and was like, you know what, I'm going to go in here today and I'm going to piss off everyone I possibly can. Like, no one has that MO. But the Star Wars fan base as of right now has been so volatile. And I even just sent you a clip from a show that was kind of making a parody about like how the fan base is being just before we got on all this. And I still think it's fine that you feel the way that you do. Like, there's nothing wrong with being mad about where Star Wars is right now. I still think it's in a great place. I think they're expanding it. I know other people who are just like, it needs to change and all that stuff. And I think that having someone like James Mangold in to do a Boba Fett movie, even if it, at least at this point right now, is not what everyone's asking for. It seems like everyone wants to have that Obi-Wan film, which I'm not going to lie, I'd be totally excited for. Having someone with this level of credential doing a character like this, who for a long time people were asking that we get a movie for, I think is a good thing. Whether we need it or not is another question, I guess, altogether. But like, where do you stand with Boba Fett right now?
Mangold is a good choice. I want Mangold to have full control over it, not to have, Disney's prying hands in it.
Well, let me say this. You say prying hands, but I was telling you this before we did the episode today. The fact that Rian Johnson had his hands all over The Last Jedi, and we got what we got. And there might have been some Kathleen Kennedy influence, obviously, but like, he was more involved in that. Like, there wasn't Kasdan or anything like that. There wasn't other people.
The thing with Rian Johnson is that with everything that was set up in Force Awakens, he just decided to not include or, expound on any of that.
Well, he was given like a checklist or something. I've been told he was given like a list.
Away.
Yeah.
He threw it away.
I heard that he read through most of it, discarded some, and kept the rest.
He discarded pretty much 99% of it.
Fair enough. But yeah, I don't know. Well, if that happens, do you want to see someone like Mangold come in and do the same thing?
I mean, the other thing,
it's tricky, right?
Yeah, exactly. The thing with the Boba Fett movie is that all of his extra story or all the extended universe stuff, which they've already kind of thrown out as non-canon.
Yeah.
So so this movie is more than likely just going to piss off people who are fans of the extended universe Boba Fett stories.
Yeah.
And then if you tell something, along the lines of those stories and they just don't make sense, they're going to be super pissed and they're gonna be like, why the hell are you making these movies? That's also the thing you run into.
Okay. Now, I agree that your points are completely valid and you have very good things to say in terms of your criticisms about it. I honestly feel like the bigger Star Wars problem right now is kind of twofold. It's one, the fact that so many people built up this level of hope and optimism for what the series is going to be because we had gone almost a decade without having any Star Wars on film, so that when it finally came out, we saw this version and it was complete fan service. Everyone went, this movie is perfect. It's a 10 out of 10. Like kind of how I was with Batman v Superman when it came out, because it was, in my opinion, very fan servicey. It gave me a lot of things that I, as a DC fan, wanted. And maybe that's not the greatest comparison, but at least for me, that was my experience. I came out of it, I was like, it's 10 out of 10. And then going back, I was like, well, it's not perfect, but, I still love that movie, regardless of how it's, it might not be the best movie I thought it was. And when we go forward with all these other movies, it starts to have this dwindling effect because they put out so many movies. It's year after year. And then once someone sees a little crack, they start to hate it. Another person sees another crack, they start to hate it more. And then that combined with, there's apparently some internet movement where a bunch of like Snyderite style DC fans are like, because we believe in the conspiracy of Disney versus everyone else, we have to sabotage it. And apparently people were trying to sabotage Han Solo as a retaliation effort to kind of balance the scales. It's a whole thing. Which it's a real thing. There's like a whole petition, and it's ridiculous, but it starts to go into the effect and the sales of all this stuff, because Last Jedi did really well, and look at how bad Solo tanked. And I don't think it's fair, because I think Solo is a really well done movie. It's not perfect, but I think it's a fair movie to put in the middle of all these Star Wars films, and it didn't deserve to get the box office that it did. And I think a lot of the Last Jedi effect came and affected it even more so. That plus all these other miscellaneous factors. Do you think that this is just going to be a continuing trend, or do you think that Star Wars as a whole is just kind of fucked for right now?
I think for the current moment, this will just be the trend. Unless they correct the ship with Episode 9, I don't really see anything changing.
Yeah, because I want to do a longer conversation where we talk about what if Episode 9 fails, but we could just go on and on. So I'm just going to leave it there. We'll probably cross that bridge many more times down the road. But I will say I do want to see the Boba Fett movie, for all the complaints that there's been about, they screwed him up in the prequels, and other people who said they didn't do enough with him in the original trilogy. I just want to see something that everyone can come behind and go like, that guy, I understand why everyone's been saying for years, that dude is a badass. And, not the dude who just flew into a Sarlacc pit and just kind of just got his comeuppance for no good reason. I want to see him get that badass kind of Logan kind of movie, and I think you got the right person to do it. So let's move on. DC or Marvel, Brad?
Let's do Marvel.
Okay,
because Marvel will be pretty quick.
Marvel is the quick one this week. Sorry, Marvel fans. I wish I had more for you. So Marvel this week, a little bit of TV talk here. We got the trailer for Luke Cage Season 2. It's coming out June 22nd. I think we had seen one prior to this, but this one has more of a dynamic that explores Bushmaster taking on Mariah Dillard's character. And I'm just curious, where do you feel you are with Luke Cage at this point?
I like the first season.
Yeah.
I do think that the villain, the supposed main villain, that was his, spoiler alert, that was his brother,
yeah,
was kind of a little lackluster, but I think everything else with the show was really good.
I do too. I will say that it was probably my second favorite of the four main characters that we've had. I know that Iron Fist wasn't for everybody, and Jessica Jones was actually really good in the first season, but the second season of Jessica Jones was so bad that, man.
First half was good, second half kind of went off the rails just a tiny bit. But anyways, besides that.
Yeah, so I think this has... Well, I think the guy executive producing and directing a lot of it is... I might butcher his name here. Chio Hadari Coker. I sorry if I butchered that guy's name, but the guy has been in charge of a lot of comic book runs. He is a fan at heart, and he's really good at what he does. I am excited to see what he does with this particular season, even though I think that on a personal level, Luke Cage doesn't have like the greatest rogues gallery by any means. I still think this could be very fun, cool, and action packed in a comic booky kind of way that still feels real and grounded. I don't know. I have a good feeling still coming off of the last season of Luke Cage. So my hope is high. We'll see June 22nd when it actually comes out. So we're only a few days away. But yeah, do you think Bushmaster is the kind of character that you want to see? Because he kind of just seems like another like a bad version of Luke Cage.
I mean, other than like being just a bad version, I hope that they maybe show maybe they're similar, and then they just made different choices in life, or maybe he's just like he's the yang to Luke's yin, so to speak.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, they need to really show how they're both kind of similar and they're both different at the same time.
Now, I got to ask you this. Do you think that not showing Iron Fist in any of the promotion of this was a good idea or a bad idea?
Well, I mean, the question I'll ask you is Iron Fist supposed to show up briefly?
Yeah, man, I told you about this a couple episodes back. He's actually, I think I even said it on our last episode, there was tweeting back and forth. Every time they put out, like, here's a new trailer on Twitter, they'll have the Iron Fist account say something, or Jessica Jones will be like, oh, yeah, I guess you didn't need my help this season, or something like that. So, yeah, he's teased for this season on top of shooting for his own season 2 for Iron Fist.
If they do use him, use him like they used the Night Nurse in Iron Fist, in Luke Cage, where she shows up for like 3 or 4 episodes, and then he goes off and does his own thing.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't think it's until Iron Fist season 2, which I'm guessing is to kind of boost the perception of that show, they're going to try and go for Heroes for Hire, which I'm excited for Iron Fist season 2. But yeah, for this season, I don't think we need a lot of Iron Fist, but the fact that they didn't show him, I think is them trying to be like a really strong PR move where they're like, we'll keep him as more or less a secret, and then when he shows up and he's actually as good as people want him to be, then people can go like, oh yeah, now I'm excited for Iron Fist season 2 because he was such a surprise. And then, hopefully they move on to greener pastures, because the whole Iron Fist / Defenders season 2, Defenders first season was such a debacle for them that I want them to kind of regain their footing again.
Yeah.
I think this will be it. So on that note, we'll get off TV talk here and move on to our number 3, which is Donald Glover, who, I'll be honest, is having like the month of his life, I'm sure. His music, all the TV appearances, all the stuff he's been doing. He's now being the talk of the town, and one of the things that he's been talked about most for is that he could be the villain of Black Panther 2. And I know you had something to say on this, so give your thoughts here.
Oh, God. Okay, yeah. So for those who aren't aware or weren't having a keen eye, Donald Glover showed up in Spider-Man Homecoming, and his character is basically a very, very early version of the Prowler.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not the Prowler. He's just like some dude that's just like very, very like bottom of the totem.
Yeah,
like,
he's just the uncle at this point. Yeah,
exactly.
He's the thug.
So the issue I have is that if they're going to use Donald Glover as a villain in Black Panther 2,
mm-hmm.
number one, they have to tie in Homecoming somehow. There has to be some explanation as to why Donald Glover was in New York and then all of a sudden he's interacting with Black Panther.
I mean, yes and no, because here's the thing. We've had other characters cross over in weird ways before, too. Like, I forget the name of the actress, but, like, Mariah Dillard, the actress who plays her, she was actually in Iron Man, or no, she was in Captain America Civil War as the mother of the boy who died, and she shows the picture to Tony Stark in the hallway that makes him feel guilty about all this and why he's doing it. And then she shows up as Mariah Dillard. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, because she's a pretty well-known actress herself. I mean, she's not Donald Glover famous, but at the same time, like, if you, I don't know, put a mask on him or make him more radically different, like, I don't think anyone was trying to do the Human Torch thing when Michael B. Jordan showed up on screen in Black Panther 2. Like, they were like, no, dude, this is Killmonger straight up. He is nothing else before this. He is Killmonger. If Donald Glover knocks us out of the park, being whoever the Black Panther villain could be, because I mean, there's a whole list of people that they could use.
Yeah. But still, that was such a kind of a high profile cameo that nobody's gonna go like, oh, I don't remember him in Spider-Man Homecoming. Like, everybody's going to go, oh, dude, he was in Homecoming, but, like, how does that connect to Black Panther? And then the questions will keep going.
Yeah. I don't know. See, there's a lot of cool villains that he has, but the ones that come to mind for me that could take on Black Panther in a follow-up movie would be, like, Namor, Doctor Doom. There's a character named Malice. You could do someone like Mephisto even, or the Skrulls, or something like that. There's all sorts of really cool characters that he interacts with, but I can't really think of specifically any real villain that Donald Glover fits into that mold for. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a hard thing to say, but I think he's such a cool dude. And even though I didn't like him as Lando, because we went into that with our reacts, even though I'm probably like the only one who felt that way. I just didn't think he was that great as Lando. I still know that he's a very good actor, and I would love to see whatever he brings to, if he was to play White Wolf or something like that, I'd be all in for that. So we'll see, but just bringing that up here now because I thought it was interesting.
White Wolf is Bucky, dude.
What? No, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, I meant the original White Wolf. Not the movie version, but yeah. Because we'll get into that another time. But yeah, the original White Wolf from the comics. But yeah, you're right. Good point. So number 2, let's talk about the MCU, specifically about Hawkeye. So, have you heard this whole thing about the disability activist who spoke out about Hawkeye recently?
You briefly said something about it before the show.
Okay, so basically this disability activist came out, I think it was on Twitter, and was making a push for more representation and diversity in these films, as, is kind of, well, it makes sense, and we want to see more of that in today's world, but he was pushing for Hawkeye, as he's been shown in the comics, not all the time, but in certain particular runs, as being hearing impaired. And I absolutely have no problem with this. I don't know why Marvel has shied away from this. Maybe they have a particular reason. Whatever that may be, they have not decided to go in that route. Do you think that we need to, or you have a desire to see Hawkeye, have a hearing disability of sorts?
Well, I think I actually said this too. Maybe Hawkeye is already deaf.
That's right. You did say that.
Maybe we just haven't, had a visual clue.
Yeah, that would be. I think he did in Thor, the original one. He had like an earpiece in, and I'm not saying that was it or whatever, but you could kind of retcon it where it goes back and you can say, oh yeah, well he had it in and it was boosting his hearing the entire time, blah, blah, blah. Or even in the middle of battle, you could have like an arrow go off next to his ear and all of a sudden now he's dealing with this particular issue. I don't know how I feel about that right now, but I think that I don't see a problem with it by any means. If that's the way that Marvel wants to go with their character, by all means, I think that's a great way to go with Hawkeye.
I think when Hawkeye first appeared in the first Thor movie, Hawkeye actually has like either one earpiece or multiple earpieces.
See, I thought it was one, but maybe he has more than one, yeah. It would be interesting to see them go in that direction. I have no problem with them trying to give him that sort of device to enhance his character in some way. Because, he's perfectly capable on his own, and I think, if anything, that would add another level of dimension and depth to him that makes him a more interesting character, because I think it's been kind of... they've made him kind of the butt of everyone's joke, like, oh yeah, well, what does Hawkeye really do to the team, So, yeah, whether it's giving him something more interesting to do or giving him a disability to make his character just more interesting as a whole, I'm all for this. Interestingly enough, though, with Jeremy Renner, who plays Hawkeye, we just got done seeing Tag. It was an early screening that we got to go and see. By the way, Tag is a great movie. If you get a chance to go and see that or Incredibles this weekend, you're in for a treat. They're both a blast, and I highly recommend it. But in Tag, apparently, Jeremy Renner broke both of his arms. So in certain points, he's actually got, and not to make a handicap-related kind of joke or anything about this, but he really has both of his arms broken. So they apparently CGI'd him during different parts of the film. So I thought that was really kind of interesting. And I'll be honest with you, I watched that movie knowing that in advance, and I couldn't even tell. They did a really good job of hiding it to whatever degree that they did. Do you have any desire to go and see Tag or Incredibles or any of those ones that we saw this week?
Again, those are nice movies when they come out on Netflix.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Honestly, Incredibles 2 and Tag, they're better than Netflix. That's how good a movie I think they are. I think Tag might be the funniest movie of this year. I'm not kidding about that. but that's just me. You know, like I think back to like when you and I were in college, and we were hanging out with like Pete and some of our other friends. I see a lot of that friendship dynamic that we had with those guys in that movie Tag, and it's just really good. And it reminds me of so many good friendship moments that I had. Like that movie it's more than what I thought it was going to be and everything I wanted it to be. So, I was so surprised that I enjoyed Tag as much as I did. But anyways, let's move on to number 1 though. The first thing, cause we're going to be in all Spider-Man mode here. The first thing is that Jake Gyllenhaal has been rumored to play the villain in Spider-Man Homecoming 2, whatever that actual title is going to be. He's apparently going to be Mysterio. Is that
Nice.
the character that you wanted for the next Spider-Man movie? Do you think Jake Gyllenhaal's for it, or where do you stand?
I think it's a good choice. I think Jake Gyllenhaal can play a maniacal character. If you've ever seen Nightcrawler, it's a great movie.
He is so
Watch
good
it.
in Nightcrawler. I agree.
So Mysterio being a failed magician, and then maybe he gets his hand on alien tech, steals it from Stark. Any sort of scenario where he starts to just mess around with Spider-Man, and it's going to happen after Avengers 4. So there's going to be a lot of heavy things on Peter Parker's mind.
Yeah. Well, that actually brings up a good point that I hadn't considered until you said it, which is them kind of going into the same, like, guy gets a Marvel Universe related thing and that makes him the villain of the Spider-Man movie. Do you want to see them kind of go down that well again, where it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm a failure until I get this, this Avengers kind of tech thing, and now I'm a bad guy? Or do you want them to go something fresh?
I mean, the thing is, Mysterio could just be motivated to be a magician, but maybe he wants to take it up a step, or I just don't want them to have like he has a negative experience with Spider-Man like they did in the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Okay. Oh, fair enough.
I would rather
You got
have
me
Mysterio.
there.
I'd rather have Mysterio motivated by his own desire versus having a bad interaction with Spider-Man and going, "Oh, I'm just gonna get back at Spider-Man for this."
Okay, to be fair, he was a crazy guy, and then it was like the voices in his head taking over and all that stuff. But yes, I agree with you. Everyone has their own different motivations, and I think, yes, the way you described it would be better than what we got. So, I don't know. It's a tricky thing, because I want kind of like the Sam Raimi style, where it was like these very powerful, almost poetic kind of moments, especially like the Sandman one from Spider-Man 3. Even though I know that the movie didn't play out exactly the way that it should have, like, I still get choked up by the Sandman scene where he's like in there and he's like reaching for that locket and he can't get it. And then he finally like wills himself just enough and he pulls it into his hand. And that's his like existence for why he does what he does. Even if it makes him a villain, he does it from a place where he's doing it for the right reasons. And that's the reason that I actually loved the Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming, even if he wasn't, the way I would do Vulture personally. He was a relatable character. You sympathize with his motivations, and he was just a character that you were kind of behind. Like, you felt bad for him from the moment that Tyne Daly and Damage Control walk in there and go like, "No, we're taking all your stuff." And I just want something like that. So with him hypothetically being like a down and out magician, like you said, I want him to kind of go through this suffering moment so that you relate with him just enough so that when he wants to do things on his own terms, you're like, I shouldn't be rooting for you, but I really do, because man, you got me. Like, I can relate to your situation. So I whatever they do with him, I think it'll be good. And Jake Gyllenhaal is the right person to do that. Unlike making him Batman. But anyways, I'll move forward here. So continuing on with Spider-Man, we finally got the trailer for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which revealed that Haley Steinfeld is going to play Spider-Gwen. We got to see all the villains in, pretty full force, I'd say, and just a beautiful style that just continues on from the last one. What are your overall thoughts about Into the Spider-Verse, this new trailer?
I liked the trailer. I thought it was pretty good. I do like how they are sort of centering around Miles Morales, kind of, I guess, being the vehicle and the main focus for the audience. Peter Parker kind of just being in there, and then, maybe he gets pawned off to another Spider-Man, or they team up specifically for, against one particular villain or whatnot. I was kind of disappointed I didn't see, a Spider-Man 2099 in there.
I'm saying this right now. I don't know for sure, but in one of two ways I could see this going. One, we're going to get 2099 Miguel O'Hara and all that stuff at the end of this movie as like a secret thing when they go oh yeah, now we're in the SpiderVerse, so all these characters are available, and they're going to pop in and you're just going to be seeing a whole bunch of Spider-Man. Or on the other hand, they're just keeping a couple big names kind of off to the side, like you'll maybe get a Ben Reilly one, or those kind of characters.
Cool.
I know, right? I would love that. And I mean, still on a personal level, I want to just see Spider-Man in the Spider-Man spider armor. But that's me. I know they don't really use it. I just want to see it show up in a video game or in a movie, but that's just because I like that suit so much. Regardless, though, I still think that this movie looks like it's pulled right out of a comic book. Like, they even have the little thought bubbles and all that stuff as he's going down the street. The animation is fluid, but also kind of done in this really cool artsy style that I just love this trailer. And the fact that they're peppering Peter Parker into it, I think is a smart way to go about the pitch of this movie, because I think there's going to be a small contingent of fans who are like, oh man, this is them trying to be all PC and go in a different direction because that's the way of the world now and all that stuff, and be all up in arms. But you can go and be like, well, no, Spider-Man's there, and they gave you Spider-Gwen too in this trailer. What more could you ask for? I think the only big problem with this, and I still say it again, and this trailer almost confirms it more, is the fact that we see him going against essentially 3 villains. And I feel like this could run into Spider-Man 3 kind of territory, or even Amazing Spider-Man 2. Do you think that could end up being a problem for them down the road when this movie comes out?
I mean, maybe. I don't think they'll have as much problems that Spider-Man 3 had.
Fair enough.
But I still think it might be something to kind of be a little cautious about. 3 villains in one movie are usually and almost all the time bad to have. But again, I think they'll be able to manage that well. But I'd still have my concerns about using 3 villains.
Right. I said this before, and I'll say it again. In my opinion, the best way to do this is have the Prowler just be kind of like how Spider-Gwen is shown here. Not necessarily a big key component to all of it, but just someone who kind of keeps the story moving. Maybe it's a reveal that, Miles, because it is his uncle, that, he's been doing it, and maybe it's more of a mentor thing rather than an actual villainous role. And then Kingpin should be kind of like the puppet master of it all, instead of being someone that you spend all his time trying to talk about character motivations and all that stuff. Have him essentially be like the man in the shadows, but maybe with a smaller, a little bit more pronounced role than just being a shadowy figure. I think that can work if you do that, and then you make Goblin, who I've never really liked the original or the Ultimate Goblin. I've always liked Green Goblin better, but if they make the Goblin the real focus of this movie, I think that would work to this movie's favor. But again, I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's a concern I have right now, and I want this movie to just knock it out of the park because it has everything going for it, and that's the one thing that I see could kind of slip things up. Yeah. My other favorite thing that I have to mention about this too is just the dynamic that Miles seems to have with his dad. It's just I'm sure the fans who listen to us, they probably think I shit on everything that's like a happy-go-lucky moment and anything that's kind of silly and jokey and all that stuff. But like the I love you, Dad kind of moment that he has while his dad's in the police car, I watched that on repeat so many times because that's just such a fun kind of father and son dynamic that I'm glad to see in a movie like this. And with the other Spider-Man movies, you haven't had a father role for any of the Spider-Man characters because, Ben dies. Spoiler. So you don't really get that. And I think this is just a fun thing to see in a Spider-Man film. And that little part from the trailer, it just makes me laugh and smile every single time I see it. So I'm very excited for this one nonetheless. Well, let's get off Marvel and go into a heck of a lot of DC that we're going to try and run through real fast here.
Oh, and I'll help you. I'll try to help you.
I know you will. Man, there's just so much going on with DC this week, guys. So I will try and burn through this very quickly and get through all of it. So first in TV talk here, we have that Kenyon Lonsdale, who was Kid Flash, is going to go from being a regular character on that show to being a part-timer of sorts and end up leaving the show in the next season. He will be leaving to pursue other projects. And even though we're losing him, though, it looks like Hartley Sawyer, who ended up playing the Elongated Man this season on The Flash, will be coming back for the next season as a series regular, which I think it sucks about the one. I'm glad to hear that Hartley's back. But I think that the fact that we get both of them to return at all for the next season is still good. So I'm happy there. Thoughts on either of them?
Legends of Tomorrow is a good, midpoint for like a lot of different characters to kind of get more screen time, and then they go back to their own show, or like you just said, they want to pursue other projects.
Right, and especially with like Arrow kind of embracing kind of the darker stuff, it's just a fun show to be on, I'm sure. Plus they got Constantine now, so I think they're good in terms of other characters.
True.
So then moving on, we got Gotham coming for season 5. Apparently, they're going to be adapting the 0-year comic book line, which is actually more recent than some of these other ones that they've been trying to look at and adapt for the show. I'm very excited. It's basically kind of like a Gotham in Ruins kind of tale, which we're going to be seeing some of that. I mean, if you saw the season finale of Gotham this year, you'll know why that's going to pair off the way that it is. So it's going to be a good season, especially if they're going to go that route. I'm very excited. On the Gotham news, though, there is apparently a petition going around to see Gotham continue on in the DC universe, the new streaming service and all that they have coming out. Do you want to see Gotham continue on, or do you like it ending in season 5?
I honestly can see DC picking it up and putting it on their streaming service.
I think it's a great idea. Actually, one of the things that was going to be on our news over on the miscellaneous side, but it's technically under DC's banner, is that as of today, Lucifer got renewed for a 4th season, and it's going on Netflix. So I don't see any reason why they couldn't continue Gotham on, and they've got such a great cast that does such justice to these characters that I would just love to see them continue on.
I think as well as putting it on the streaming service, I think it allows them to do maybe a few extra things that they couldn't do on syndicated TV.
Well, yeah, or just the silly things get cut out too. Like, I think it was season 2 or season 3. They kept on doing in the middle of every show. They would cut to a commercial, and it would always be like a product placement for Ford, where like the stars would get behind a Ford, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, this Mustang's pretty fantastic," and you take a test drive.
Lame.
Yeah, no, it was really silly, and you come to expect it from commercials and all that stuff, but I didn't need to see it, and it kind of like it almost hurt the product to see those characters step out of those roles and be like, well, I'm Bruce Wayne and I'm getting behind a Mustang, and like I don't need to see that. So yeah, you cut out some of that extra nonsense and you just get to the heart of seeing the show. And you probably get a longer format too, because it'd be less commercials if it's on a streaming device.
Exactly.
Continuing on, though, another show that is looking towards its next season is Krypton. Krypton has been renewed for season 2. I loved it like 90% of the time. I still had a hang up about some of the choices and changes with characters like Zod and I actually like Doomsday in this one, the way that they do it. And there's more stuff. I don't want to spoil the finale of it all, and I hope that what I've said hasn't spoiled some of it for you guys. But Krypton is very good, despite some little changes along the way that I had hangups about. And what they're going to do for next season really has me intrigued. But we can talk about that another time. I'm just glad that it's getting renewed. And then in TV talk here, continuing on, we have that the Teen Titans could potentially become renewed if they have a massive success with Teen Titans Go to the Movies. First of all...
Basically,
yeah.
Ryan's saying, please go out and watch this movie.
Essentially, yeah. Well, I have numerous reasons for it. I'm going to say it because I actually didn't really love the early 2000s Teen Titans series. I know a lot of people did, and people hated Teen Titans Go. I actually liked Teen Titans Go more because, in my mind, Teen Titans Go... well, first of all, they're quicker episodes, so they're easier to digest. You're not, I have enough TV shows to watch as it is, right? But when I watch Teen Titans Go, it's very fan servicey, where there's like, a Batman related jokey thing in the background that they're making fun of, or they'll, even like we talked about the posters that were in the background of the movie trailer, where it was like making fun of Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Martha, or whatever it was. Like they have really good fun with it. They're like, okay, we realize that, like there was like a, like where's Mario kind of thing, but it was like where's Superman's mustache was like another poster. And I'm like, okay, I get it. You're having fun with what has been, kind of the culturally accepted norm thing to make fun of. And I would too. And they have a good time with it. The show is actually surprisingly catered to more of an adult crowd. I was watching from my hotel room. I was on one of my trips for work, and they had this one episode on. I forget what the reason was, but they kept making Golden Girls references, and I'm like, what child is getting this Golden Girls reference? Like, they bring out all four of the ladies, and then they're doing all the stuff, and I'm like, this has got to be going over some 12-year-old's head. Like, they have no idea what this is. So I some of it actually is catered to an older crowd, and I respect them for doing it because it's probably made by people who are our age anyways. That being said, I do have to do a quick plug here, which I probably should have done at the top of the show now that I think about it. But we're going to have one of the artists who worked on Teen Titans Go to the movies on our show the week before that movie comes out. Just a nice way to tie in with the movie, I think. Yeah, and great guy. We'll be talking about him more as we get closer to that episode. But yeah, look forward to that. We're going to have a nice special episode with him on, and we'll be talking about that later. But my question to you, though, is do you want to see the original Teen Titans show renewed?
Yeah.
Did you like that one better than Teen Titans Go, or you just liked it in general?
I mean, I can remember watching a couple episodes, and I liked it.
Okay.
So I didn't watch it in depth, the 2 or 3 seasons that came out.
Yeah. Their dynamic with, Slade was kind of just the main bad guy of that whole thing, as he should. I like those sort of situations, but when they started bringing in, some of the other characters, and I don't know, it just wasn't for me. Plus, it had a bit of a anime style to it in some respects, and I don't know. You know how I am with anime. I'm very on again, off again. So, anyways, I still think Teen Titans is great. Teen Titans Go is even better. Look out for that, and go see Teen Titans Go to the movies. Last thing on TV talk here that I have to bring up is that Louis Tran, who some of you guys, especially on the Marvel side of things, will know from Deadpool 2, who played Shatterstar, was teasing himself in front of the DC offices there. And, he had some books in hand, like he was doing his research. My question to you, Brad, is do you think that Louis Tran, could end up appearing in the DC universe? Because I'm guessing he's probably not going into the movies. He's about a TV production level actor, I would say. Do you think that he's going to be a big role, or do you think that he's going to be something smaller?
You never know. They might put him in a movie.
Very true. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see, I guess. But I could see him being one of the villains that the Teen Titans have to go off against in the Titans TV series. I think he'd be great for that. Especially because he has that kind of like martial arts background where, much like a Ray Park kind of character, you can have him doing all sorts of cool stuff, but also have a good actor doing, whatever you need him to do. Also, if anyone hears any small bangings outside of the episode from here on out, apparently 3 blocks down the street, someone is blowing off fireworks for no reason.
Nice.
So fun tidbit for anyone who's wondering what that noise is. But anyways, that is our TV talk. Let's move on to number 3, which is Zack Snyder related, which always a fun topic to bring up. Yeah. As if we haven't talked to death about the whole, where is he involved or not? But I thought this was a good place to bring this up because we have a lot of, where's the DC universe kind of talk coming forward. So first of all, as you probably know, we've been following Zach on again, off again with his Vero account and all the little tidbits he's been dropping along the way. Now, recently, we found out that Wonder Woman is on the way, and Zach decided to post that he is, quote unquote, back. Now, we know that he's supposed to be a producer for Wonder Woman, but, some people who like to tend to overthink things, or maybe read this correctly, depending on who you are and how this plays out, want to believe that Zach might be in a more predominant role than just a producer based on this statement. Where do you think he's at, and do you think that there's a feeling that Zach should come back in any capacity more so than a producer?
I think it's a little bit of an overstep to say that he's coming back in a very big role. He had a lot of like family issues over the last year and a half. Yeah. So I think for him to kind of get back into the swing of things with Wonder Woman 2, just to kind of either assist or, just get back into the motion of things would be a good thing. I don't see him having a huge role in production of the movie, right. But I do see him, being maybe consultant of some sort.
No, actually, I agree with all that. The weird thing with Zach is, well, there's a million weird things that we could talk about with Zach. I want to see him have a good relationship with Warner Brothers. And I know people in the industry who would probably fight me tooth and nail, like, he is on the outs. They hate his freaking guts. And like, I've had the conversations behind the scenes that people on our show don't ever get to see or hear about. But there's all sorts of people who just hate his guts, think he's the worst thing to happen to cinema since who knows, I don't know, Uwe Boll or something like that, which is, I find it ridiculous. He's just a director. He does a different style than other people. He's just a guy trying to, get his check at the end of the day, whether you like his style or not. And his involvement still exists with DC. And it might not be, I'm creatively, pulling the strings and here's my storyboards for like the next 3 DC movies, but he is going to be involved in some capacity based on his contract, whether that continues on or not. His wife, Deborah, is still a part of these movies as a producer as well. So like, it's not like they just went, middle finger, you're out the door. We're tired of you. They were probably disappointed with what he had put out because it wasn't fitting their vision. And yeah, they're probably contractually obligated to keep him on. But, I bet you if Zach plays nice, he's probably going to stick around for whatever they were looking for from him, and they'll keep things moving forward. And he just won't be, the puppet master of it all anymore. And that's fine with me. I mean, because, I've said this before when we talked about like Batman v Superman and our reacts and all that stuff. If he was just a cinematographer of these movies, they would look fantastic. Or even just his buddy. I forget his name. He follows him on Vero as well. I forget the guy's name. I think I've retweeted him a couple times. But he's helped him a bit. And then there's there's a lot of other people in his kind of like production team who make these things as beautiful as they are. If you were able to bring those same people onto the movies and maybe have someone who's a little bit better at telling a more intimate story or stuff that has a little bit more connectivity to it so that people aren't poking holes in all of these DC movies, which, to be fair, they totally can, and I get that. But if you had more people working on these things than just kind of letting it be, Zach's child and letting him have the whole run of the show, I think we would get some really epic films that could be debatably comparable to like the Nolan style films. And I mean that in a good way. But it's a really hard thing. I can't speak to where Zach really is, but I think he is a part of this new Wonder Woman movie, and that he will continue on with DC for at least a little while until he's like, you know what, I'm doing my movie, The Fountainhead, and I'm just done with the rest of this stuff. But for now, I think it's a good place. The only thing that's very additionally interesting to all this that there's that whole hashtag release the Snyder Cut, and it seems like it's getting some traction. And take this one with a grain of salt, guys, because I don't always like to believe that everything you hear from DC is always on the up and up, and we'll talk about that in our other two topics. But Fiona Zhang is an individual who has been closely connected with Zack Snyder, mostly through Twitter. And I don't know this person personally. I don't know her motivations. Maybe she's just a real big fan of his or whatever. But she kind of got that whole Snyder Cut movement started, and she has been essentially the go-to voice for people who want to know more about what's going on with that, aside from Zach's Vero account. And she just posted today, I think it was, that, everyone who talked negatively about the Snyder Cut needs to, I think it was like cash their checks in or something now. I forget how she worded it, but basically saying that like anyone who doubted that movie, the chickens are going to come home to roost essentially, because you're all going to be kicking yourselves for saying that there's no Snyder Cut because one's coming. Do you think, and I'm being totally honest with you, do you think that there exists a world, our world, I guess, whereas the Snyder Cut could actually exist? Yay or nay?
It may exist. Public may never see it.
Fair enough. Okay. I am still, and I'm not in Camp DC Marvel. I'm not taking anyone's side in this. I genuinely think that from what I have seen, there is enough there to put something together. Is it going to be great? Maybe not. Maybe it's just going to be as bad as Justice League was. And I say that as someone who loved Batman v Superman and Man of Steel. But I don't think it's going to be this fully fleshed out movie that changes the game completely. It's not going to break box office records and all that stuff. It'll probably be something that gets released. It might even be directed DVD or whatever. But whatever the case is, I don't think it's going to be as high as the people who are expecting it to change the game are going to be. And I don't think it's going to be as terrible as people who want to just shit on everything Zack Snyder does think it's going to be. If it comes out, great. If it doesn't, my life will go on and I won't have any second thoughts about it, But I just wanted to get your thoughts because everyone always likes to keep this talking. We've been talking about it for 2 years now. So, I mean, I don't feel like the conversation's slowing down anytime soon, which still kind of baffles me to no end. But let's move on to number 2. So at number 2, we have some more movers and shakers in the DC camp, as it were. So I'm going to just kind of bullet point through who's coming and who's going. So Diane Nelson, who was the president of DC Entertainment, is now officially out. She went on vacation like 3 months ago, said, hey, I'm taking a little leave, I'll be back. And she's out. She decided to just leave completely. What her reasoning is, not particularly certain, but I think it might have something to do with the fact that they promoted Walter Hamada to be the president essentially of the company now. So I think they kind of ousted her because I think she had her way of doing things. And there is a report, although I don't know if I can 100% believe it, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But The report says that when he walked in, he described the DC Films department as a quote unquote shit show. So yeah, I don't know if that's true because a lot of this other news that came attached to it we'll get to, and that's where I start to pick this apart because I'm not Mr. like fake news. Like I know that's such a buzzword today and I hate it, but I know that there are some people who are motivated to get, a story out there as opposed to getting something factual and honest and what's concrete evidence rather than like, I heard from so-and-so and he heard from another person. Like, I just want news to be actual news and just come straight forward with it instead of secondhand stuff. So this feels like a secondhand thing. I don't know why someone would just come right out and say, oh, hey, this company that I work for or this person I know through the grapevine says that their company is a shit show. But they could totally say that. I know we've all said bad things about the place that we work at from time to time. So I think that's interesting that Diane is out, but Hamada is in and taking kind of the reins. It looks like DC is not going to be putting a lot of movies out like, yeah, in 2025, we're going to have a Cyborg movie that's been pushed back 5 years. Apparently, they're going to be stopping that. So that's at least good to hear. They're sticking to like,
very good to hear.
Yeah, they're sticking to like, we have this, we're going to do this. But again, why I refute this report a little bit is because of the fact that they're talking about other movies that are going to be coming down the line, and that's what's coming up at number one. But nevertheless, we have Jeff Johns, of all people, leaving his role as chief creative officer and president as well, in a different role, a different presidential role in the company. Now he's leaving, and this is actually, in my opinion, a good thing, because it didn't seem, respectfully, like he was doing very much in the presidential role that they had him in. So now he is stepping down from the roles that he had. Jim Lee is now becoming the chief creative officer, which I think is equally as good as Jeff Johns, if I'm being honest. And Jeff is now creating Mad Ghost Productions, which is his own production company that will oversee the Green Lantern movie, and he will write it and executive produce that movie. So never more in my life have I felt like Green Lantern has a chance to be a really good movie than this news right now. And I tweeted at him. I was like, yeah, this is what I want to see, more Green Lantern, all that stuff. But I won't go into a whole Green Lantern thing there. He's also going to continue on by doing his own particular comic book line. It's a little offshoot thing. It's an imprint that DC's doing called The Killing Zone, where he's basically going to focus on characters that haven't really had the light of day. I hope that means more JSA, if I'm being honest, or because you know how I am. I Justice Society of America is it's good ground and people don't tap into it. But he already had his JSA run, which was good, so maybe he'll move on to other characters. Actually, just as a side note, I didn't even have it in my notes. It looks like DC is going to be bringing back The Question in the comics. Brian Michael Bendis was tweeting that The Question is going to have a bigger role going forward, so I'm looking forward to see what they do with The Question.
Is it like a cousin of the Riddler or something?
No, I told you about this before. The Question. You're such a dick. You're such a dick. You know who The Question is, right? You're not yanking my chain. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, The Question could be coming back potentially in the new Superman comic books, actually, which should be interesting. As Jeff Johns is doing all these comics, he's also going to be doing two specific lines. One is the new Shazam series, which kind of makes sense because, we got a new Shazam movie coming out, and the Three Jokers, which were teased in the Doomsday Clock series that he's doing.
That is the comic version is the one you don't have a problem with, right?
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with the Doomsday Clock at all. I've read up to, I think it's issue 3. I think they're up to 5 now, and then they kind of slowed it down because it was like, I think it was every month, and then they went to like bi-monthly or something like that. So I kind of fell out of it, but what they gave us, that connectivity with Watchmen and the DC universe was really cool. How they explain the Joker thing, I have no idea, but if Jeff is behind it, I have way more faith in it than I did with anything else he was doing. That being said, though, we have one more little mover shaker thing, and that's just that it looks like we're going to have... you know what? I'm going to say that we'll just move right into number one. Let's just talk about our number one, because our number one really is about the DC characters, movie-wise. So first of all, we have a certain person by the name of Ben Affleck. Now, at the time we started writing my notes, he was officially in. We were going to see him at San Diego Comic-Con, and the news was Ben Affleck's going to be there. Great. Awesome. So excited. The report as of this week, no. They're trying to go younger again and blah, 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 blah. They want a younger actor for Batman. Great. Fine. What is the real news? You know what I mean? And that's where I'm at. And this is why I'm so frustrated with, and I think that DC needs a PR person, because I genuinely believe, and I could be 100% wrong, every news outlet out there could bash me, blah, blah, blah. I genuinely feel like, for whatever reason, there is a feeling by someone out there, whether it's the news outlets, just to keep a story viable or to keep people talking about superheroes because it's the hot commodity, to say, oh, yeah, well, we reported this thing 1 month ago. Well, now we're saying the exact opposite thing. And then there's a storyline to this, the whole thing, because they've been saying he's in, he's out. And I don't think Ben Affleck is just sitting there in his like rocking chair with his massive tattoo on his back thinking, you know what? I'm in today. No, you know what? I'm out today. And then, you know, like
he's got like a little spinning wheel with an arrow on it.
You know what? We should just make the entire DC universe like a character like Two-Face, where it's just they flip a coin and every single day someone's changing their mind. You know what I mean? Like I'm so frustrated. Not a DC. What?
It'd be very meta.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're very self-aware. But I'm just so upset of the whole thing, and I'm not mad at DC, because I guarantee you they're not in their boardrooms going like, you know what, we should have 4 Joker movies. And how do you feel about Ben Affleck? You know, it's a Tuesday. I feel like he should be gone. You know, let's kick Ben Affleck. Let's bring him back in. Like, I'm so tired of this.
I honestly think that it was probably a scheduling conflict that Affleck isn't going to be at San Diego Comic-Con. Yeah. Rather than, he's completely out now. He doesn't want anything to do with DC.
Well, no, see, and the report seems to be, as of this week, that now Matt Reeves has made up his mind. He apparently submitted his first draft, or like the first act of what his first movie is going to be, and it calls for a younger Batman, which, that's fine, that's fair, but the idea that we got to this point from saying like, oh, Ben Affleck is this, I know based on his contract, which is a concrete thing. Well, I mean, with some obvious, clauses where he could dip out, of course. But he's contractually obligated to be in at least one more DC film. So there makes sense that, at least from a very logical standpoint, they would do something with him. Even if he's not going to be in the Flash film, which would have been a great way to use him. If they did Flashpoint and all that. It's very frustrating, not as a DC fan, because I believe that behind the scenes there are more competent people than the news is giving us the reason to believe that there is. I don't believe that there's people just like, throwing darts at a wall going like, you know what, that Batgirl movie, you know what, let's try again. Throw a dart, hits it. Yeah, you know what, we're going to do Batgirl again. Like, I just don't think they're doing that. I do believe that there probably is a couple people behind the scenes who are like, you know what, we need to go in this direction, we need to go in that direction. We're shaking things up because of, the Justice League thing and Batman v Superman's performance. But I don't think it's just a spin the wheel and, pick a new movie every month that we can. I think that Wonder Woman, Batman, Flash, Shazam, and what was the other one? Aquaman are like definite. They're definitely down the pipeline. All this other stuff is just runabout conversation. And even if we bring up stuff like Steven Spielberg being a part of the Black Hawks movie, these are all just things that people are reportedly attached to.
Black Hawk? What?
Yeah, we talked about this 2 episodes ago.
Black Hawk?
The Black Hawks, yeah. Steven Spielberg.
Oh, no, you're right. No, okay.
I remember. So there's all that stuff. And I'm just going to kind of run through all these other ones that we had here too, because I don't want to get caught up specifically on Affleck.
Black Hawks, I'm like, hockey? What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, that's the Midwestern part of us that's talking there. But so they're saying for the Batman movie, we might get the Penguin, and the Penguin would show up in both the Batman and the Birds of Prey movies. First of all, I'm not seeing the Birds of Prey movie happening. There's so many problems with what they've said with that. Oh, yeah, it's going to be a movie where Harley Quinn's involved, and then there's going to be this person and that person. And I go back to what I've said before. I don't see any world where, like, we have a Batgirl movie, but no Batman first. You have to do these things in sequential order. And I have to believe that there is enough level of common sense at Warner Brothers, at DC, to go, yeah, you need the first thing before you get to the second thing. You don't get to a Robin movie without Batman. You don't get to Superboy without Superman. You know, it's like you have to do these things in sequential order. Otherwise, the fans are just going to be like, well, that was a weird choice. And I mean, you can probably get a good movie out of it, but I guarantee you the diehard fan base is going to be like, this was stupid. I don't know why we're getting this first. I guarantee you, if you don't put yourself on good footing, you're going to end up like all these other universes that we were talking about during Miscellaneous, like the Dark Universe, where it's like, yeah, we're just going to give you this big old thing and it's just going to fall apart because you didn't set yourself up properly in the very beginning. Mm-hmm. Give us the core elements of the Justice League and then go, hey, you know, Booster Gold showed up at the end of, I don't know, the Flash movie because he was also time traveling or whatever. And then he showed up and then like, there's your segue into a Booster Gold movie. Do that. Get people excited for that movie and build out into the universe. And like Marvel did that. It worked. Just continue doing that sort of thing. It's not that hard. So after we get past the whole Batman thing, we find out that the Joker, who also kind of related to all this nonsense, is in. He's out. They're going to do a Batman, or they're going to do a Joker movie, and then they're not going to do a Joker movie. So the most recent thing that we've heard is that there is going to be a Jared Leto movie as of last month that is going to be coming down the pipeline. That is apparently a for sure deal because Jared Leto, quote unquote, bullied his way into getting another Joker movie made to kind of save face after the way Suicide Squad went. Do I think that's going to be the case? No. Do I think there's a possibility that Jared Leto comes back in a Suicide Squad movie as the villain? Absolutely. Then we get a report as of just a couple days ago that there is going to be 2 Joker movies now, which I think is completely ridiculous because they're going to have the Leto version and then they're going to have a Joaquin Phoenix movie that's coming out, which is that Origin one we've talked about. That Origin movie is reportedly $55 million. It's shooting in the fall and it's quote unquote confirmed. Now, I am the furthest from bashing on a confirmation, and maybe this is true, but the thing with all this is they're saying they're going to introduce a DC Dark label, which, you know, because it's like one of those things where you hear someone say something stupid and you go, you know what? Okay, I hear your stupidity. Oh, but now you're going to raise that stupidity on me? Like everyone shit all over Batman v Superman for being too dark. But now what are you going to do? You're going to make a Joker movie about his origin, which you shouldn't do in the first place. Then on top of that, you're going to go, hey, let's introduce a dark label, the thing that everyone absolutely hated, you know, the dark and gritty, that sort of thing, taking all the fun out of our characters and not focusing enough on the heroic aspect of it. And we're going to double down and make an entire label of films that focus on the dark characters of this universe. How does that make any sense? You know, it doesn't. And this is the thing I try to tell people on Twitter. And I know that sometimes people want to just believe what they want to believe, and it's totally fine. And I am the first to admit I'm wrong, and I'm about to get to one of the things I am wrong about. And it's just the fact that people want to believe the first thing that they see in front of them. Some people will just read a headline and be like, that's the news, and I'm good with that. But they don't read any of the details into it or ask themselves, wait, how does this make sense? Why is this going on? And that's what I like to think that we do with this show. So on that particular note, I think that it's very possible we could get a Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. If we get that, I don't think we're going to get Jared Leto. It's going to be one Joker movie. It's not going to be 2. And if it does, call me crazy. I'm more than happy to admit when I'm wrong, but it just does not seem logical for them to have 2 movies about the Joker played by 2 different actors and then set in 2 different separate universes. Like as popular as the Joker is, he's not even as popular as Harley Quinn is by, you know, comic book standards these days. Harley Quinn is actually outselling most of the characters in the DC universe. It would actually make more sense for her to be in 2 movies rather than Joker being split off into 2 separate universes, which I'll just cut it off right there because I could just keep going. But it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I don't think that DC is making that call. I think these are people who hear a little tidbit and they're just making up stories as they go for the most part. Continuing on with that report, though, we've heard that there is going to be a theme, as it were, for The Flash, which again makes me kind of refute that report, because it just seems like when you hear people say common sense things to you, like, oh yeah, well, like what I said with Booster Gold, like I would totally imagine him going through time, because that's just what Booster Gold does. He comes back to the present day because he's a guy from the future. The particular report that we heard is that The Flash is going to be a quote-unquote Back to the Future inspired tale, which, I mean, that's pretty much what the Flash does. He travels through time, or he has, adventures in his city, and that's really what that character would do. Like, that makes perfect sense. Like, it just seems like a redundant report, like telling you what you already know. Yeah, I'm sure he'll probably have some sort of time traveling adventure. Like, that's what the Flash does. He's a fast character. So hearing that, I'm just like, okay, great. If they mean like a literal, like he's going to go back and like hang out with his parents and then like have a fun and wacky adventure, which I don't think it's going to be. I would agree with that. Too.
But it's the fact that they're saying it's going to be like a Back to the Future kind of thing. Like, well, I mean, first of all, there are 3 movies to pull from. Second of all, you're just gonna attribute the simple, 88 miles per hour,
right,
trope to the Flash.
See, and this again is why I shit on this, because again, it's common sense to say the Flash would travel through time. That is one of the things he does in the comics, obviously. Then you take back to the report from about a year ago where they were like, oh, yeah, you know who's going to be definitely doing the Flash movie? It's going to be Robert Zemeckis, now that we dropped the first director who was attached to it. And Robert Zemeckis is like, no, I'm not doing this movie. Nor does he want to do anything that's Back to the Future inspired. I mean, he did express interest at one point, but then he was like, no, I'm not doing this. And they moved on from Zemeckis. Then they got the guys who did Vacation and Spider-Man Homecoming and Game Night this year to be the directors, John Francis Daly, and I forget the other guy's name. And they're going to do it. And I don't think that they're going to go for Back to the Future with this. And if they do, cool. But I think this is just a lot of people hearing tidbits, whether it's from the internet or maybe from their quote-unquote sources, and just piecing together things that could inevitably be true down the road. Like, oh, you know what? That Superman movie, it's going to have him blocking bullets. Oh, wow. Superman blocking bullets. I've never seen him do that before. It's common sense that he would do that. So nevertheless, that is the report on the Flash. And let's get to some stuff that's actually real and really happening. And that is that we have Aquaman and Wonder Woman, and they have finally premiered some images that came out this week in a very DC heavy week, and it has been great. I love what I'm seeing with Aquaman. We've got about 7 images that came off of Entertainment Weekly's cover and subsequent pages within as of this week. I think they look awesome. We get to see Atlanta, played by Nicole Kidman. We get to see Tamara Morrison, who is playing Arthur Curry's father. I mean, we get to see so much of this movie. I was very surprised, and I felt bad about this. You can see my mistake on Twitter. I actually thought that the guy with the ponytailed black hair was Ludi Lin, who is I think he was the Black Power Ranger in the Power Rangers movie. I thought he was the general that's got his back turned to the camera, and turns out that's Nudist Volko, played by Willem Dafoe. So the whole thing looks beautiful. Have you seen these images, Brad?
I've seen the Aquaman ones, yes.
Did anyone in particular stick out to you?
I mean, not necessarily. I do, it does look. Oh, wasn't there one scene where they were wearing street clothes?
Yeah,
maybe?
Well, yeah, there was like what I've been told is they actually shot that particular scene in Spain. So it's Arthur and Mera, and the two of them are walking through, and there's like some. It looks almost like Roman columns or something like that in the distance behind them, and they seem to be like looking at a map of sorts or some sort of parchment. It looks really cool. I mean, I wouldn't say that's my favorite shot, but it is kind of interesting to see them kind of, on the land, because I've heard a good chunk of this movie is underwater. But my favorite thing, honestly, my favorite thing though is seeing that scene with them. I mean, obviously the director's in the shot and all that stuff, and it's behind the scenes. But that one that I described where it's Arthur, I think Mara's in the scene, and then it's Nudis Volko, and they're going over some sort of plan, and they're in this like underwater ship, and it I don't know, it just looks really cool. Like what I would almost have expected from Pirates of the Caribbean if they had sunk a ship and then tried to have dialogue that takes place and them hatching a plan while undersea. Also, fun fact with Aquaman, we just found out this week that the director is trying to go and make the dialogue a lot more seamless. If any of you thought that them trying to do like the little pocket of air bubble that they did in Justice League was weird, he basically said, no, they just talk underwater. It's not a complicated thing. And then he's going to add some level of effect after they speak to show that water is moving around them after they talk. So just like to kind of simulate sound waves. So it's just going to be more of a natural effect. And I think that's probably better than,
okay.
Yeah. Instead of just doing like some big giant bubble, cause how inconvenient would that be? Like, oh wait, I gotta, and then like finally opens up another bubble and they keep doing the bubble thing over and over. I'm sure that would get really annoying to do. So it's a lot less CGI. It makes it a lot more seamless. I think it's a great idea. But yeah, I'm very excited for what I'm seeing. And then of course, Black Manta. Can't forget about Black Manta. Did you see you saw the helmet image, right?
Yes, I did.
Do you think he's going to knock it out of the park, or do you think that it's just good enough?
Like, I mean, the image is good. Like, I just don't really know. We'll see.
Yeah. I think it's, if I'm mispronouncing it, apologize, but, Yahya Abdul Mateen, the second who's, playing Black Manta, I think he's a good actor. Like, I've seen him in a lot of stuff as of late, you know, even if it was just little things like Baywatch, and I'm ready to see him knock it out of the park with Aquaman, even if he isn't the main villain of the film. That helmet though, I am ready to see Black Manta. And lastly, before we wrap this all up, and go to commercial break, I want to talk about Wonder Woman 84. First of all, I want to apologize because I know that I said something wrong. Back episodes ago, I said that there was no way in hell that Steve Trevor was ever going to be in this movie because it wouldn't make sense. And this is why, from time to time, even when I say the stuff like all the Zack Snyder and the two Jokers and all that stuff that we just talked about could end up being true, this is one of those things where Steve Trevor is in these Wonder Woman images and he looks a little disheveled, like he's like a man out of time, as I've said on Twitter. First of all, I want to apologize because he does show up in there, but I really want to get your thoughts. What do you think about Wonder Woman knowing this particular image and what we're seeing going forward?
Well, I think we did kind of talked about it before the show. It may not necessarily be him being alive.
Right.
It's possibly maybe an illusion, a trick of some sort. You know, it still could be a flashback.
Right.
But I don't think like he's going to be back fully in like the like living sense, like he's actually, you know, back from the dead, so to speak.
Yeah. There's so many ways you could go with this, but I'm doing one thing when I'm looking at this image. I'm reading his body language, which I don't do it very much, but this particular image, I can see a lot of things with it. One, he looks a little like he's unsure, but he's also kind of like looking around like he doesn't understand where he is either. And that is leading me to a more specific place because I saw the DC fanboy kind of comments about all this. Oh, is this Steve Trevor's son, or did he survive the plane crash and he's been living in the 80s and then he finally bumps into her again? And there's a lot of fun theories out there and a lot of ones that I would love to subscribe to. But when I read the body language here, I'm seeing this is a man who has been pulled out of, what was it, the 1920s, I want to say?
Older one, so it's like 1912, 1913.
Yeah. So early 1900s to come to, well, the 1980s. So he, again, fish out of water, kind of like what we said. I just think that there's something at play here. I don't know if I'm right about this, but I will say that there was an early report at the very beginning of, oh no, I want to say it was end of last year actually, that was saying that Cersei might be the actual villain of the Wonder Woman film. And maybe it still is Cheetah, I don't know. but I think that there's some level of magic at play. And I think this is probably some level of either hallucination or something that is playing with Wonder Woman's mind. This is more of a mind game for her, because there has to be an explanation for Steve Trevor living as long as he did and looking around like he doesn't know where he is and feeling like he doesn't belong in the 1980s. I'm sure for Wonder Woman, this is a pretty easy transition. She's lived through all this because she's immortal. But for Steve, what I'm reading off of this is that he's probably been jumped forward in time to the present, whether it's through Wonder Woman's magic or through, or maybe Cersei's magic, to bring him into the present for whatever reason. And we have some behind the scenes videos that we also threw up on our Twitter too. So you guys can go and look at that. But I don't think it's like his son or anything like that. Do you have any personal theories that you think that could be going on that would bring him to the 80s?
I think he gets brought back just to mess with Wonder Woman a little bit. Not necessarily like he's actually alive and he's just been, yanked out of the the early 20th century.
Yeah. I mean, again, we're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. I would love to see what the official look at Cheetah is going to be when they actually get to her. But the movie's just started filming, so, I mean, we're really early on here. And, I can't wait to see what they give us. But I will be the first to say this, well, at least on our show. But I don't think we needed to bring Steve back in any capacity. How it plays out, we'll see. It could be good. But I think, in all honesty, whatever they do, unless it has a real awesome payoff, I think this kind of screws up things. And I'll say why. First of all, the dialogue in Justice League, whether we choose to remember that movie or not, there was a discussion with Batman and Wonder Woman, where he was mocking her, essentially saying that, is that how it would have happened with Steve Trevor or something? I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And then it really boils her blood and she gets really upset at him. And I feel like unless Steve Trevor dies again, it kind of hurts that impact. And on that same note, Wonder Woman 1 kind of loses its impact if you see Steve Trevor literally come back and just live on in another movie. Because her whole reason for, well, I don't want to spoil that for people who haven't seen the first Wonder Woman, but you should go see it if you haven't, is really, it's motivated by what happens with him. So why bring the character back just to kind of do it all over again? So I'm a little hesitant of it, but I'm glad to see Wonder Woman back. I think the movie's still going to be awesome because we still got Gal Gadot, we still got Patty Jenkins. Having Chris Pine back isn't a bad thing, but I'm excited nonetheless. Let's just wrap it up with this. What DC movie are you the most excited for at this point?
I actually want to see Aquaman.
Same. I think I'm Camp Aquaman. I have the most curiosity about Shazam, and Wonder Woman I just feel is like on autopilot, where I'm just like, I'm confident it's going to be good, So we will cut to a quick commercial break and we will be right back.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
This week's sponsor is Loot Crate. For less than $20 a month, Loot Crate gives the geek in you a special treat with each box. Loot Crate is a subscription box service with more than $40 worth of geek, gamer, pop culture gear, collectibles, apparel, etc. You'll have until the 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific to subscribe and receive this month's crate. And when the cutoff happens, that's it. It is over. So head to lootcrate.com/nerdrage and use the promo code NERDRAGE to get 10% off your crate today.
And now, on with the show.
And we're back, and we're actually joined for the big talk this week with our good friend Eric from over at the Crossover University. Now, Eric, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Eric. I run the comic segment and the whole podcast for Crossover University. The other guys aren't here.
I actually, I never even knew segment-wise, like, who was, like, running the show. Like, you are, like, the founder of the team?
I run everything. I schedule everything. I edit everything. They just show up and learn what we're talking about as we do it.
I know a lot about that very thing. So no, it's all good. We're glad to have you on. The reason that we asked Eric to come on for this week's episode is because E3 is right in the middle of where we are right now. And one of the biggest topics is a little thing that we actually casually shared up on Twitter, and it's gained some traction across all different media formats. And that is that Superman could end up having a game from Rocksteady this year. And while we've heard many times that it's possible that, you know, there's a Superman coming or there's a Justice League game coming from Rocksteady, we just haven't seen anything definitive. So whether that's the case or not, we thought it'd be fun for the big talk this week to have us give our top 3 speculated games that either could appear at this show or in a future show down the line that we would want to see. So I think it'd be great to just start off with our guest, Eric. At number 3, what is the game you'd like to see and why?
An old one was Batman Arkham Insurgy that was rumored last year.
Okay.
Because Damien's growing on me. I'm a big fan of Robin in general, so I'd love a game centered around him.
All right, I like that. Now, how would the game play out? I've never heard of this one before.
So the rumor was I think it's like 10 years after Arkham Knight.
Okay.
Damien is now Batman. He has a motorcycle, and the villain is... I couldn't remember the villain. It's a new black mask, but it's a girl.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And that Dick Grayson would return, but like he's bald and has like a scar over his eye and stuff.
Oh, he's seen some shit then, huh?
Yeah, but that never panned out. It was by WB Montreal.
Oh, yeah. See, okay, I gotta ask you this. How did you feel about their take on the Batman Arkham series?
It had the best story, honestly. I loved it.
See, I've never played it, but I keep seeing people go back with images and stuff, especially there's something about the Joker and him with Harley Quinn that I keep seeing little clips of, and it always seems engaging, but everyone always keeps telling me it's not the best.
You don't know?
Yeah, they do a great take on...
Is it? Okay.
The Killing Joke, and that it's pretty interesting to watch.
Really? Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to add that to the list then. So a good thing we talked about this one. Do you think that it's a possibility that this could ever happen, or do you think this is getting scrapped for sake of something else?
I'm pretty sure once the Suicide Squad game they also had developed got canned, it just kind of didn't pan out. The lackluster drop of Arkham Knight didn't help.
Yeah, that would have been a great game too. I mean, yeah, and unfortunately, the Suicide Squad doing what it did, it made a bunch of money at the box office, but you could see that the fandom was there for the movie, but the aftermath not so much. So yeah, the game probably would not have done so well.
Well, part of the issue with Arkham Knight was it would not the quality of gameplay or the storyline. It was more so just the quality of the game functioning. It was actually a console port to PC, and the PC version ran very poorly when it first came out.
Oh, I was talking about Suicide Squad, but yes, I agree with your Arkham assessment as well. Yeah, totally.
So a reception for the game might be kind of lukewarm at the moment.
Yeah.
Seeing that Rocksteady's PC port was very bad.
Yeah, they took it down and gave refunds for like 6 months straight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
It's fine now. It's good on PC now. It's good now.
Okay, so Brad, what would your one at number 3 be?
Okay, so this one, it was sort of talked about very briefly at E3.
Okay.
But it's Star Wars Fallen Jedi Order. It's being produced by Respawn and published by EA. Now, the one thing, they didn't really talk about anything about it. They really did an interview with the I think it was the Respawn CEO or the lead director. He was kind of like sitting in the crowd.
Okay.
But
I saw that. Yeah.
Supposedly, it's going to take place between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and it's going to basically follow Order 66 all the way to A New Hope. I
really hope that's a great game. It just sounds so good, doesn't it?
It does. The only thing is, it's being made by EA, so
true.
I have very little trust in EA. given that the fact that they canned Visceral Games, who was working on a single-player Star Wars game.
Wasn't that because of what they were doing with Battlefront 2, though, and that single-player campaign?
Because there's a lot of stories about this. Basically, they cut the project because they said they weren't going to get a lot of it return on investment.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the business world for a while, and I hear things like that, but it's usually code for something else. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they just felt like that was competition and was like, we'll just can it all together. So yeah,
I honestly hope this game is just a single player game where they actually put out a story driven game. Whereas, and you may disagree, but Battlefront 2, the Star Wars games that EA have put out have been very below average.
Well, I will say this. Yeah. I have not played Battlefront 2, and we talked about this, I think, on the last episode or during the Han Solo Reacts, which, again, I want to say thank you to the fans. That episode is doing quite well, and I appreciate that. But with our last talk about it, I was just kind of thinking that, maybe there isn't the audience for a Star Wars game, or maybe it is that it's just a single-player mindset at this point. But everything I keep hearing about the game, aside from, like the good things, obviously, not the negatives that I've heard from you, they just announced stuff like a whole Attack of the Clones kind of campaign. They're bringing in, I think, Dooku and Grievous and things like that, so I still haven't played it, but there's still a part of me that, despite the negative things I've heard, wants to delve into this.
Yeah. I mean, they're bringing out new stuff, but it's just that the player base doesn't trust EA. Period. Yeah.
Well, they haven't trusted them for years. Yeah.
Well, then when Battlefront 2 came out, the whole loot crate card system was an absolute sham. And players really just don't want anything to do with EA. So EA has a lot of ground to cover in order to even bring back manageable numbers of players that want their games.
Oh yeah, totally. And my question to you though is, since we're on this particular point, do you think that based on, because in their comments yesterday, they were saying we're doing away with this, we're doing away with that, we're trying to listen to the fans on all this stuff. Do you think that's just lip service, or do you think that they're really trying to take that step forward and, be a better company?
It's lip service until they prove it.
Agreed. That's a very good way to put it. What is your take, Eric?
I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Battlefront because they did a lot of back talking when it released. It's been terrible, and they even said sorry for it at this E3.
Yeah.
But as for Jedi Fallen Order, it just sounds like Force Unleashed, but from the good perspective.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm not against that, but yeah, we'll have to actually see some screens or what they're actually putting together for anyone to really get behind it. Other than it sounds good, I guess, but it's still
they're playing a Jedi. That's about all you know.
Exactly. Yeah. So. That's a good thing, but there's so much more to unpack with a game like that we have no idea about yet. So, for my number 3, I actually want to see a game come back that hasn't been around for, I want to say, almost a decade now, and that is Def Jam. The Def Jam fight for New York and all those games.
Oh yeah,
I played the GameCube one a lot.
The GameCube one, now, if I'm not mistaken, was that the one where you would spin the turntables, or was that PS3 that I'm thinking of?
That was PS3.
Oh, okay. That was the one I loved the most, where you spin that back and blow up the environment around you. I had a great time with that one. Remind me, what was in the GameCube one?
It was, I don't remember the name of it. If you guys want to talk for a second, I'll look it up really fast.
All right.
It was Def Jam Fight for New York.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
I just remember beating people up.
The newest one that came out was kind of meh.
See, I only got that one because at the time I was doing DJing stuff in our town, so DJ Hero and all that stuff was a big thing to me. So being able to do the turntable and all that stuff, I had a good time with that, and the fact that they had rappers like E40 and some of these other guys that I don't want to get long-winded about a bunch of rappers, but I think that the game itself was still an interesting concept, and I was thinking about it more recently, especially with E3 on the horizon, and I'm sure they're probably not going to bring it back because who was the one who was producing it? Was it EA?
Yep.
Go figure. Yeah. And I'm sure they probably don't see the market in it, but I would love to have a game like that now because there are so many mumble rappers out there that exist that I would love to just have like an old school rapper beat up. And I wanted to have like a Marvel vs. Capcom or a DC versus Mortal Kombat kind of thing, where it's the old school taking on the new school. So you could have like Lil Pump getting beat the hell up by Ludacris or something like that. I think that would be really awesome. That's what I want to see. I haven't really thought about gameplay mechanics or, does any cool parts of that come to you guys? Like, how would you expound on that? Like, if you could.
Oh man, I think if you build it like Battle for New York was, they allowed you to create your own character and you could learn different fight styles and whatnot.
Oh, okay.
But I think if they kind of go back to basics a little bit, I think it's not that I didn't like the idea of
the turntables.
Spinning, during the turntable, the exploding environments, but like it's sort of unrealistic, whereas the first two were kind of more realistic. They were more grounded.
Yeah, I agree with that because when I would play, I think it was Troy, my good friend that I've mentioned many times on the show. We'd play it, and he's not really into rap. He's very much heavy rock and all that stuff. And I'd play him in it because at the time we'd trade off. Like he'd play Rush 2049, and I'd want to put in the game, and then I'd play him in it. But I would keep using the environment. I keep blowing it up behind him, so he keep popping up in the air, and I just beat the crap out of him. So it was a very cheap dynamic, but I had a lot of fun playing that game. So I can't complain too much, but I know it was kind of a cheap dynamic to throw into there. So yeah. Any rappers you'd want to see in a game like that?
The entire Wu-Tang Clan.
Yes.
All of them.
Where do you hail from, anyways, Eric? I forgot to ask you that. Are you from the East Coast? Georgia, okay.
Atlanta.
Atlanta. See, I thought you'd be wanting to go for some down south rappers, but you're all about Wu-Tang?
It's all about being down in the Shanghai.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. You know what, now that I'm thinking about it, would you like to see, like, I don't know if, or I can't even remember from when I used to play the games, but did they have any sort of, like, finisher options for the characters? Because I would love to see that.
They had some, like, ultimate moves you could end with.
Did they? Okay. Because, if you had Wu-Tang, like, bring out a dragon or something like that and have them, like, destroy your enemy, some sort of finisher, I'd be all about that.
I wouldn't be opposed to Childish Gambino being in there.
Right? Exactly. And, see, that's part of the new school I can get behind. But, yeah, I just want to beat up some of these mumble rappers. Brad, would you want to throw anyone specific in?
As far as rappers?
Yeah, or are you not about that life?
Oh, God. Probably Drake.
There you go.
I'd really like to see Drake in there.
That's a good choice.
The ultimate boss is Little Tay. Or Little Tate or whatever.
There you go.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, Little Tay. That'd be funny. She could use her parents' property and whatnot.
Oh,
exactly.
man.
It'd just be fun to beat her up.
I like it. Okay, cool. So let's go on to our number twos. What would yours be, Eric?
I'm going to go for serious favorite. I really want more Final Fantasy VII Remake information.
Yeah, and I'm totally down with that. What do you love the most about that series?
I've played a handful of them, and I enjoy them, but 7 was definitely my first, and everyone, the first Final Fantasy is always your favorite.
Yeah, agreed.
But I just like that it looks like Final Fantasy 15 now, and I love that it's not turn-based anymore, which is interesting. I just really want to try it out.
See, and going back to what you had said, like, that's the way I grew up on it. Like, I was turn-based, NES style. I would go to my friend's house when we were, like, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and we played the crap out of 1, 2, and 3. And that's the way I always saw Final Fantasy. So it wasn't until they brought in, I want to say it was like 2 Christmases ago, they had World of Final Fantasy, and I lost my mind over it. I was like, it's the little characters again. It just feels like almost more akin to where I remember it, instead of like boy band characters that are driving around in a car for no goddamn reason. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it pays off and it's all great in its own way, but like I feel like I lost touch with what the series is after it got to that kind of point. But I hear nothing but good things about the series over the years, so I mean, I'm cool with that if that's the way they go. But 7 was very turn-based though, right? The original, right?
Yeah,
it was very turn-based. And this one, they're definitely doing non-turn-based according to the trailers and how they've talked about it.
Okay. What do you love about the non-turn-based system?
It gives me more to do.
Okay.
Turn-based, it's great when you're a kid and that was your one game and you want it to last. But nowadays, games are everywhere. You can rent them. You can stream them.
Right.
I want something that draws me in with gameplay that can keep me hooked. I like strategy, but I also like being involved in it more.
Okay. It's more immersive, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And Brad, where do you feel about the Final Fantasy series? Do you come in more my way or his?
Man, I kind of stopped playing after, what was it? I think it was 10.
Okay.
I played 12 a little bit, and then I kind of moved on to other stuff like Mass Effect and stuff like that.
Yeah, you were all about Mass Effect.
Mass Effect's awesome. I actually went back and played all of the original ones, like from like the Nintendo versions, the Super Nintendo versions. Honestly, to this day, I still don't know if I liked 9 or 10 more.
Okay, so you're right in the middle there with the franchise, huh?
9 and 10 are both just so good.
9 and 10, they're fantastic.
Like you got Titus, who's fantastic. You got Zidane, who's fantastic. They're just too good to choose.
And honestly, like both supporting casts are awesome. I honestly think the story in 9 is a little bit better than 10. But 10, you get if there was a mod where you could do this, I would just play Blitzball all the time.
I don't even know what that is, but it sounds awesome.
And that's all it would do. That's all it would do.
Could not figure it out for like the first 5 years I had that because I just wanted to fight, and then once I learned it, I got way better at it.
It's seriously addicting. I think I played through like 3 or 4 seasons on it before I finally actually moved on with the rest of the game.
So to elaborate, what is that? I'm not familiar with it. Yeah.
Okay, so think of soccer combined with rugby
in a big ball of water.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So kind of like water polo?
Sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're not like you're inside a floating ball of water, so you're never coming out of the water.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I mean, like the characters can breathe underwater, which isn't like the issue. It's very. I mean, like you can unlock different abilities for different characters that like can give you an edge, and it's crazy.
So I'd never heard of this before. Do future iterations, or I should say more modern iterations, have games like this built into them?
Usually each game has like some sort of mini game. I think it started. I'm pretty sure it started at 7. Does 7 have a mini game in it?
Huh.
I don't. Oh, it's got the golden saucer, so you can do like chocobo racing and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like it was chocobo racing.
There's the motorcycle and sliding, and then 8. I didn't play 8 that much, so I don't remember that one.
9 has the card game, which is actually kind of fun. 10 has Blitzball. 11 was online only, which was kind of a precursor to Final Fantasy 14, which is
never played 12 or 13.
12 and 13, yeah, that's right. I never played 13 either. So, kind of
I heard I think it was 12 and 12 up to 14. I heard were the ones that always had problems. So they make those ones like 13X or all these extended editions.
313.
Yeah.
This is like lightning returns and shit.
Yeah, it's like 13.2 and 13.3. 15 it doesn't have any game in it, but you have a ton of like hunting side missions where you're basically tracking down monsters for money.
Oh, interesting.
And that's like its extra thing.
Huh.
And I guess there's some car stuff you can do. That's about it.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know. That's to me like nothing I grew up with in terms of Final Fantasy, and it sounds very interesting. It's just so weird because it almost sounds like a completely different game. So yeah, I don't know where that good entry point is when they started to change things so that I'd be like, it would be a gradual build to, and I'd be interested in all this stuff. 13
is a great entry. No, 15 is a great
15.
entry point.
Okay.
Because they've designed it for both fans and newcomers. There's modes where you can make the combat turn-based, so when you stop moving, everything will freeze, and then you can plan your attack around it.
Nice. Okay.
And it's very interesting combat. The only thing I don't like about the game is the driving. The car auto stays on the road. You just hold down the trigger and turn where you need to turn.
Oh,
that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you can make the guy drive you, and then you're just sitting there listening to them talk. But you can listen to soundtracks from all the different games before it, and you can buy different soundtracks throughout the game.
Interesting.
You can get like a Walkman and listen to it when you're running around the world. So there's a lot of fun to it. There's fish. Oh, there's fishing. That's its mobile thing.
Huh.
Oh, okay.
There's a whole fishing mini game for Noctis that's really fun.
Oh, I have heard about this fishing game. I heard that they were actually going to spin the fishing game off into its own little thing.
They're doing a VR version.
Hey, that's what it was, yeah. So, Brad, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is it's been teased again, kind of like Star Wars: Fallen Jedi Order.
Okay.
But it hasn't even been confirmed. But I'm hoping that we get an Elder Scrolls 6.
I mean,
oh yeah, you with Elder Scrolls every.
But we haven't seen anything. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna.
It was a terrible reveal. I mean, it was just like a floating thing and then a title, but not even a title, just the name Elder Scrolls 6. It was confirmed.
Because I know, Brad, you always want to talk about Elder Scrolls. Every time I'm over at your place, you're always playing it, and I know you love it. But for the audience, like, what is the thing that makes you most excited about Elder Scrolls as a whole?
Oh man. I guess it's I'm trying to remember the Khajiit's name that always is trying to like scam you. I can't remember what his name is. He does something really weird. But anyway, Elder Scrolls in general it's kind of Lord of the Rings-esque. If you're a fan of the Lord of the Rings and you actually want to play it, yeah. Elder Scrolls is really a good segue.
Okay.
Bethesda kind of made it after Dungeons and Dragons, and then they just like completely wrote their own story for it.
Interesting.
Yep. Let's see. God, I think there's been like 6 games out.
Okay.
7 games out.
Sounds about right.
Right now, Elder Scrolls Online, it kind of had a mediocre start, but now it's like, I think it's like one of the top 10 games being played on Steam right now.
Really? All right.
They just came out with another expansion, Somerset, like a month or so ago.
Okay.
I'm all for that Skyrim on Alexa. That's my next one.
Skyrim on Alexa?
Yeah. The Bethesda did a joke on that.
Oh, okay. I was like, what is Alexa? But you're talking about like the Amazon thing, right?
Yeah, they had Keegan-Michael Keel playing it on that, and he's like yelling at it to do the things.
Oh, that would be awesome. I would love to see that.
And next, it's going to be on beepers, and then on your TV screen on your fridge are the next things for Skyrim, apparently.
Okay, that sounds cool. I'd be all for that, even if it is as a joke, though. Yeah, so very cool. Are you a big fan of the series, Eric, or no?
Not really. I'm more sci-fi. My other hosts, they both love the Elder Scrolls series. One loves Oblivion, one loves Skyrim.
Okay.
I played them. I enjoyed them, but
they must have some heated arguments over those two.
Not really. They like them both. That's just which one they play more.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay. Brad, we'll have to connect you to those two, and then you guys can all dish it out sometime.
Don't, because then I'm going to get sucked into ESO, and then that's the only game I'm going to be playing for like next year.
Oh, boy. All right, so for my number 2, the thing I would really like to have is a Green Lantern game. I'm just kidding.
You had one.
They had one, and I love that game to death. I didn't want to throw it in.
Game?
What was that?
The movie tie-in game?
I love that game because to me, okay, this was at a time when single-player games were all the rage, and they were basically like, they were essentially God of War ripoffs. Like they had this Dante's Inferno, which I absolutely love as well. I was addicted to those 3 games at the same time. Now, I will admit, God of War is the best out of the 3 of them. Dante's Inferno, on a personal level, for me, just spoke to me more. I think
Darksiders was a good one.
I didn't like Darksiders. Well, the original one I thought was okay, and then they brought in the second one, which was a different one. I think it was like Death, and I don't know, something about it I just wasn't feeling. I have like 3 versions of it too, because they kept giving it to me on Steam packages on my PC, and I was just like, yeah, I'll get to it later, but I never even open up the game. Yeah, and I do love third-player adventures, like, Uncharted, for example, is always one that's been a big fan. I've been a big fan of. But yeah, I do actually love the Green Lantern game. I have it also on the Nintendo DS, and I've never played it yet. I'm waiting for the next plane trip, and then I'm gonna crack it open and try and play it for the first time. But
have you
go
played
ahead.
The X-Men Origins Wolverine movie tie-in game?
That game is so much better than the movie.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, Brad, have you ever played it? Come on, Mr.
No,
X-Men.
I stayed clear of it.
Oh, you shouldn't. It's great.
It's bloody. You heal. You get. It's everything the movie wanted to be, but way better. It's all hack and slash. You can rip people in half. You're lunging across. It's fantastic. I just love that they had, like, your model would get covered in bullet wounds, and you would watch him, like, deteriorate, and then you'd see it all grow back, like they did for the Deadpool game, but they did it well before that. And
the Berserker form of it all was fantastic too. Yeah. I mean, he was vicious. I was like, why can't we get this in the movie? It's
like the opening cutscene. He puts a man through helicopter blades.
Yeah, Fox keeps just trying to get involved, and it screwed them over royally, especially with Origins Wolverine. But it's for the best, because we got a great Logan movie down the road, and then we also got a great Deadpool movie down the road. Well, 2. Actually, for both franchises. I actually even like the Wolverine as well. I don't know if you feel the same, Eric. Yeah, I mean, it's better than Origins, so in that regard, I like it. But yeah, so I lost my train of thought. The game I was going to actually...
Green Lanterns.
No, that was my psych out, because I figured everyone else was going to say that, or everyone was going to expect that from me. You know what? I'm going to stick with the Green Lantern one for now, and we'll come back to me if I think of what the other one was originally.
Which lantern would you have in it?
I actually want it to be more of the core, as much as I like the third person kind of perspective of it all, and making it kind of like God of War, because me making the constructs, whether it was like a giant, ball and chain mace style, or having the Gatling gun that I could just fire down my opponents, and all the villains that he could take on, I kind of want to see the core dynamic come together. I almost want it to be like, do you remember I can't remember what they were titled, but like I think it was X-Men Legends and the Fantastic Four games that they did back for the, the Fox universe.
Yeah, they did.
They talk about like Ultimate Alliance and stuff, where it's like third person or 4-player dungeon crawler style.
Yeah, where it was dungeon crawler, exactly. I almost want to do that.
Legends 1 and 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Nemesis or whatever.
Yeah, I want to do that kind of thing, but I want to be able to switch between Green Lanterns. Even if we couldn't make it work, that 4-way dynamic where like you press up and then it turns to one character, press down, it goes to another one. Even if you could change it in a way like they do with the Lego Marvel and DC games, where you could select from a giant list of just random lanterns that are all kind of based on their own abilities, and they had like,
including
maybe
Badge the Little Squirrel.
Yeah, exactly. You can have like even like the Red Lanterns and all that stuff. They could be selectable after a while too. So you could have all sorts of characters like Larfleeze, do the Orange Lantern stuff, and I mean you could go on weird separate side missions. I could go so many different ways with this, honestly.
I'd like Supergirl, Red
Yeah,
Red Lantern Supergirl would be fun.
Or even get like a Red Lantern version of Guy Gardner. Yeah. Oh man, now that you say that with the Red Lanterns, I kind of want to do, because I'm reading Blackest Night again, like go through all the Blackest Night, like I could get Blackest Night Hawkman. You just kind of like blew open my mind. Like I was starting small.
In Batman Arkham Origins, you can be Blackest Night Batman.
Oh, that would be so good. Yeah, like
Suits.
him with that yellow fear suit too. Oh man, I love that one.
You get that one in Arkham City, and then you get Darkest Night or Blackest Night and Whitest Night in Arkham Origins.
That's great too. Yeah, I forgot about those. Yeah, I played through all of those and unlocked all those costumes, and they were so good. Some of those were kind of ridiculous. I think it was like I want to say like the Batman 1,000,000 suit or whatever. Those were kind of.
I like that one.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different one, but yeah, there was one that was a little too futuristic for my liking. But
it's the one where he's wearing the full face mask and it's like a hovering bat logo.
Oh, maybe I think I might be thinking of a different one. It looked like more of an older, grizzled one. And it wasn't. I don't think it was like the Dark Knight Returns, but it doesn't matter. I on the futuristic note, my last customization for Injustice 2 that I did was just completely decked out in all the future tech gear, because they added, when they gave the game an upgrade at the beginning of this year, they expanded out all the costumes and they added a whole nother set, and I became so addicted all over again until I got everybody to level 30. So
my highest is 25.
Oh really? Oh yeah, because you were the one in our group that was playing it as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I just started picking up again because I wanted to get the green arrow hood, which I just got today.
Oh, congratulations! Yeah, because I was getting all excited when they first dropped that update. They started doing all the CW shows, and I was hardcore about all that. The funny thing though was I didn't learn, and I told Brad this on a different episode. I didn't even realize it, but they had that option where you can like kind of auto play through it. Once your character's kind of built up, you can go in those the multiverses, and you can just have the guy auto play through it. And I had been playing every single match all the way through that whole first year.
That's no fun though. You gotta do it yourself.
It's true, but once you get to level 20 and you burn through, and occasionally I paid for some little upgrades along the way, but when you burn through every single one and you play so many matches, I was looking at how much time I had spent on it and how quickly I got up to level 30 by doing the autoplay, and I was like, I could have saved so much time in the last year, stuff I could have dedicated to the show. But in the end, though, it was worth it. I didn't hate it. I still love being able to customize those characters. Such a good game. Which with honorable mention, I would say just give me another Injustice game, honestly, because, God, that game is so good. Let's move on to our number ones. So what would yours be, Eric?
I want to hear more about the Avengers project. The leak is that it's going to be called Ultimate Alliance. It's going to be third person, God of War kind of like adventure.
Okay.
Switching out characters, and you start with 3, and those are the main, and then you can add more Avengers as you reassemble the team after a big incident.
Interesting.
Supposedly you're Captain America. It's Captain America, Iron Man, and Scarlet Witch, and then you have to build the rest of the team.
Oh, okay. I mean, that gives... yeah. I was going to say that gives you... okay, yeah, so... The one I had heard was there was like an Avengers one where it's all like first person. I think it was a game that might have got scrapped, but it was like you could be Iron Man like in the HUD set up or whatever, where he could see things on the screen, kind of like Metroid Prime, but you'd also see his hand extended and he'd be firing out at his opponents and things. I don't know. I thought it was kind of cool. But I don't know if this is the same one we're talking about, because it sounds like yours is more third person.
They announced it last year, and the trailer was like you see all their weapons broken on the ground, and you hear a girl talking about how they have to reassemble, and it's like #assemble, Avengers assemble.
Oh yeah, I know the one you're talking about now. Yeah, from last year. Okay, yeah. So I hope it does come out. What was it?
I'm hoping to hear about that tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, PlayStation has got to have some crazy stuff under their belt, because I was expecting from everything I had heard that Microsoft was going to have a crazy show, and I haven't heard a lot of great things. I mean, I don't know. Have you guys been watching anything that's been going on over the last couple of days?
I watched them both at work.
Okay.
There's new Gears of War. There's new Halo. They talked about Anthem. There's a couple new things that are pretty interesting. They showed off a new Kingdom Hearts trailer that was pretty cool.
That one I've heard blew some people away because they finally committed to it. I think it's February of next year.
Yeah, which makes me sad. Yeah,
I mean, the fact that they at least gave it a specific date as opposed to like, yeah, well, when we get to it, it's better, but not what I think fans wanted out of that. So, Brad, was there any of like the EA or the Microsoft that you've been watching aside from the Star Wars news?
I mean, EA's press conference was all around just kind of like boring.
See, I've heard that. Yeah.
Very, very uninspired.
Okay.
It was just more of the same stuff that they're doing already.
Yeah. On that note, quickly, do you feel like the sports side of EA is kind of ruining their presentation, or what's wrong with the way that they're doing it?
Their microtransaction model is ruining their sports games.
No, I mean just the presentation side of it. Is it the fact that they're doing, one thing wrong, or is it a lot of things?
Well, the thing is, they expect people to buy an entirely new game with maybe one new feature.
Yeah, I can see that.
Maybe FIFA has maybe there's a very slight adjustment or a very new adjustment or new addition to the card system for their Ultimate Team stuff.
Okay.
And it's pointless.
Yeah, I can see that.
The presentation was bad because they didn't show any new games. They just showed us trailers for games we already saw. They announced, and then just kind of briefly talked on it, and then told us, "Hey, here's DLC for old games," but nothing new and exciting.
Wow, well, that does sound.
We're sorry about Battlefront. Please play it more.
Sounds about right. So yeah, on the EA side of things, I didn't watch it all the way through. I just listened to a bunch of other people recap it. So I've heard their responses to it, and that's where I've been able to assess what's been going on. I did come in for some of like the football stuff and all that stuff, and that's where my mindset is with all that because I didn't want to keep watching it because I knew that they were going to give you another sports game and another sports game and another sports game. These things are year after year after year. Even like the NBA Live franchise, which I grew up loving, but I know it has gone through its shaky moments and is currently losing out to NBA 2K, whatever we're on now. I'm just to the point where, like, do you need to tell me that? I mean, couldn't it be just this, trailer to get you excited for it, down the road, maybe a month before the game comes out or when pre-sale starts, and just go, okay, this is the new version. It's got this, and this. Get hyped, and then, get on with your day. Instead of throwing it in with a bunch of video games where, I'll be honest, most of the people going to those conventions aren't really interested in what the next sports game is. That the sports game audience already has an install base that's ready to buy it every year, like clockwork. So I don't even think it's needed to be put in there. I mean, do you guys think that it's a good idea that they even keep it there?
No.
I haven't played anything since NFL Blitz 2000 on N64.
Yeah, I'm
only because I could play as Raiden.
Good game, by the way.
Oh,
I only played as Raiden, and I loved it.
That's where it was at, and that was the best stuff. When I got my PS4, the first game I ever got, because I was like, you know what? I'm going to try. This is a next-gen, at the time, system, and I'm going to try and commit to whatever this new Madden game was. I want to say it was like Madden, I don't know, 11 or 12 or something like that, but I ended up playing it, and it was really good. But then the next year came, and I was just like, it kind of looks the same. And then I think that year there was some problem with the game's release or some of the dynamics. I was like, dodged a bullet, and I didn't feel the desire to go back and keep buying it year after year. And I'm happy that I didn't, because
I think the only good one that did anything was NBA either 16 or 17 had an entire story mode directed by Spike Lee.
Okay.
And it featured like the death of a character, and you have to avenge him and all this while playing basketball. And like that was the only one that actually gave you a reason to want to play basketball other than just play.
That's
with
some
your friends.
serious shit. Wow, I've never even heard of that. I kind of want to look into this
it's
game.
It's like your friend's an up and coming rapper, and they take him down because they
of
don't
course
want you.
He is.
They want to throw you off your game and all this. And it's the only one that actually wanted you to play, but they haven't done anything like that since.
I'm just seeing some like ridiculous South Park montage in my head about like avenging a fallen friend and all that stuff. I think that would be great.
It's like with the golfing one where you get to beat up Tiger Woods.
I would love to play that game. All right, so that was your number one. What is yours, Brad?
this game's kind of already been teased, and there's been 3 trailers for it, but we have really yet to really know or understand anything about it. And that is Death Stranding by Kojima Productions, and only being produced on the PS4.
That is the fallout after Konami and PT, correct?
Basically, yeah. After Metal Gear Solid 5 kind of finally came out, Kojima was kind of like cut off from like finishing the game, and then
they wouldn't even let him go to the release and all that.
Nope.
Oh yeah, they blackballed him.
They wouldn't let him accept an award. It was PT was like supposedly the next Silent Hills game, and then Konami.
Fantastic.
PT's awesome. I still have it on my PS4.
Me too.
I'll never
delete
get rid
it.
of it.
No,
Oh,
God, no.
No, don't delete it. It's really cool. It's super freaky. Every time I play it, I still get freaked out.
The one that gets me is the radio voice. When it's like standing there,
when
it's
he
like,
starts-
look behind you, look behind. That one always gets me.
I hate it when it starts talking Swedish because that really freaks me out.
That too.
So basically, it's Kojima. He has his own studio now, working exclusively with Sony, and they basically told him, "You can do whatever you want." And this is what this game is called. It's called Death Stranding. It's got Norman Reedus in it again.
Yep.
It's got Mads Mikkelsen playing supposedly the villain of the story.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah.
And it's super trippy. There's a lot of like, how do I explain this? It's possible like multiple dimensions and you know different take or different concepts on like quote unquote player death.
Okay.
And the fact that they are actually the game is actually going to take cooperation between other players to kind of, I guess, I don't know, to figure out certain parts of the story or to like help out with certain aspects of gameplay. Like I said, we don't really know a whole lot.
Yeah.
I think we're supposed to get a really good segment tomorrow on Sony's panel.
Cannot wait.
That would be great.
That Last of Us, that other zombie game they're doing, and then Spider-Man are like their big points.
Oh, isn't there the Ghost of Tsushima or something
And
like that
yeah,
too?
from Sucker Punch.
Oh, that game looks really good too.
I haven't heard about that one. So what is that one from Sucker Punch?
So the people who did Infamous Second Son is doing it's like 19th century samurai game.
Oh, it's
really?
I think
Feudal
it's
Japan.
either 15th or 14th century feudal Japan.
Okay. Yeah, it's feudal Japan, and it's a really cool looking samurai game. They showed one trailer, and they're supposed to talk about it tomorrow.
I think it's supposedly fending off the Mongolian invasion of Japan.
Okay. That sounds really
fun.
awesome. Okay. Any other additional thoughts on your number 2 there? Or I'm sorry, your number 1 there?
Other than that, I'm just looking forward to the press conference tomorrow.
Yeah, I think PlayStation is going to knock it out of the park. Now, to be fair, I didn't get through all of Microsoft's, and some of those games you guys mentioned sound good, but the thing I said to someone else in one of our other chats is that as cool as those games are, I don't feel like any of those were like really a wow factor, because a lot of those are kind of, you know, if you're expecting something from Microsoft, they're the things that you would expect them to come out with. Like, they're their big tentpole games. Like, when they announced that Spider-Man game last year, I was just like, where did this come from? I'm so glad it's here. I want to see more of this. And then, you know, we're getting more as time goes by, obviously, and it looks great. But I want to see that one just like, or even like Horizon. When Horizon dropped for the first time, you know, we saw the trailer for that. I think that might have been 2 years ago now. I was just like, again, I've never heard of this game before, but this one is that one that looks like it stole the show because it's such a out of left field game. You know what I mean?
Microsoft had that. It was called Scalebound, and then they canceled it.
Yeah. Oh, I remember Scalebound. Yeah.
That game was beautiful looking and a really interesting new concept, and then they're like, sorry, here's Crackdown 4.
Didn't they? Yeah. Didn't they
Which will never come out.
Didn't they shut down the studio too?
Yep, it's gone. They cut the whole thing.
How ridiculous. I really want to know what happened with that.
And now Crackdown's coming out next year, hopefully, supposedly.
Well, I don't know who's going to be excited for it, but did you ever like those games, the Crackdown ones?
I played them a little bit. They're okay.
Okay.
And basically, think of like Grand Theft Auto, but you have kind of superpowers. That's about
They
it.
need to do another Streets of Crime game, which was like Grand Theft Auto, but as a cop.
Yeah. So wait, maybe I'm confusing it with a different series, but isn't that the one where you get like way weird with all the powers, abilities, and gear?
That's Crackdown, where it's like super futuristic cops with power armor and stuff.
Oh no, I meant like Pimps and Hoes.
Oh.
And then there was like a
I think
character
you're thinking
that was like looked like Hulk Hogan. Man, what was that game?
Ryan, I think you need to clear your browser history, Ryan.
I think you're thinking of Saints Row.
Thank you. It's Saints Row. That's the one I'm thinking
Saints
of.
Row.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's like knockoff GTA.
Right.
Yeah, it was GTA, but more silly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm confused.
Giant dildo bat.
But I didn't. I didn't know about that one.
That's a weapon.
But I knew it was crazy. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's some interesting games that have been knockoffs of that series. But I think for my number one, like there were a couple ones that I was kind of toying with, like the idea of bringing back Metallica the game. Which, if you guys haven't heard about that one before, look that one up. It's pretty great.
Brought back Battletoads.
What was that?
Bringing back Battletoads.
Yeah, I saw that just before we got on here. That's pretty impressive. I wonder if it'll be a good game, though. Who's the team behind it?
I don't know. They didn't really speak too much about it. They just showed like the title and like some 2D art, and they said it'll be in 4K, and that's about it. Okay,
because I know that Microsoft has Rare under their belt. I would love it if Rare got involved in that, because they were always a good company. But I tended to go over to like the ukulele side of things, because those are the people that made the Banjo-Kazooie games really great. So, if they were to at least tackle Battletoads, I feel like I'd be a little bit more excited. It really comes down to the publisher, because they can make or break a game that's retro like that.
I need a Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts remaster.
Did you like Nuts and Bolts? Because I always heard mixed.
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. I knew people who loved that game. They're like, oh, it's a fresh new take, but they were very much Xbox fanboys, so I never knew if that was.
It had no heart and soul to it whatsoever.
Oh, really? Okay.
It felt. We need a new Conkers is what we need.
Agreed. Ooh. Shoot. Well, we'll give that honorable mention for sure. Yeah.
I love a new Conkers game.
That game was way ahead of its time. I love that game
really
so much.
It was beautiful.
Sometimes a little too crass. I remember being so young at the time when that game came out, and my mom just like, what did he say? I was like, no, it's a cartoon, Mom. They just don't. Never mind. Go away.
I could only play it at a friend's house because my parents wouldn't let me own it.
Yeah. Oh man, those are the days. Yeah, actually, when I had to borrow it from a buddy of mine down the street, Jimmy St. Louis. What up? Yeah, best last name in the world. But he always got all like the Diablo games, all the R-rated kind of stuff that I couldn't really get in my household, so I'd always sneak it from him, put it on my PC or whatever, and end up playing my stuff there. But yeah, those were the days, man. Those were the games. But yeah, like I could mention stuff like that Metallica game, or I don't know if you guys ever heard about it, but there was originally a Gotham by Gaslight video game that they did. I think it was like right before.
There was a tech demo for it too, and everything.
Yeah, that and a Flash video game that they had a lot of the stuff rendered, but just never came to fruition, which is disappointing.
Green Arrow game.
You see, that was I swear to God, that was my original number 3, and then I changed it for Def Jam at the last second, because Brad and I have talked about this, but they had the Green Arrow movie that they were going to make way before the TV series. It was going to be Green Arrow Supermax. And it was basically going to be him in prison fighting all the people that he had put away.
Okay.
And like basically it was kind of like a Prison Break before there was Prison Break kind of thing. But he had to fight his villains because everything went to shit essentially in the prison. But I would love just a game where you're in like just a very specific location. like a prison or whatever. You didn't have to have the massive Spider-Man style cityscape, but it's just you breaking out of prison and fighting your enemies along the way. Go ahead.
Well, building on that, I would take it as use the engine from the recent Tomb Raider remakes, have him surviving on the island for the first half, and then becoming the Green Arrow the second half.
I like
when
that.
He gets back.
That is really good. Yeah, the way I saw it was kind of... Do you remember when Watchmen came out and then they started making these little mini games that would show up on the PS3?
On Xbox, yeah.
When they broke out of prison, that was almost... Well, I mean, I wanted a bit more fleshed out, but like that prison break thing that they did with that Watchmen game, that's how I wanted my Green Arrow game to be. I really... Oh, man. I wanted more. As soon as that game came out, I was like... This is how they could have done it, but, I know there was never plans for a Green Arrow game, but I would have tried to do something akin to that, because I love those Watchmen games. Because it was...
I did too. I played them.
Yeah, it was broken up in parts 1 and 2, right, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes,
yeah.
That is correct.
And then they had to fight some big boss at the very end, right? I can't remember. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was some of the...
Yeah, they're prequels. They basically happened before the movie.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, amongst all those games that were, close to happening, but never did. I think the one thing that I've always wanted to see, because we got kind of close this year with what they announced with Pokemon, which was like a 3D, finally moving around in the environment for Switch. I want a Mega Man game, and I don't mean Mega Man Legends, because it had the right idea with Legends, but the execution was very flawed. I want to be Mega Man third person. I wanted, just like the cartoon, essentially, where like,
What about the Mega Man X games on PS2 that did that?
In which way? Like
it was overhead third person 3D environments as Mega Man X and then Zero.
Oh, I had that for GameCube, actually. It was the Command Attack or whatever?
No. I think it's called like Mega Man X... 10-6 or something like that.
Mega Man 10-6? I don't know of that game. Huh. Mega Man 10-6, huh?
It was Mega Man X7 and X6, I believe.
Oh, okay. I don't know... Because I got through...
It might have been Legends.
See, yeah, I always think of Legends because that's the one where he's running around through the city half the time without a helmet on. And
might have been Legends.
Like, the animation was good for its time, I guess. But, like, I want something that feels like the cartoon where you're running through the city. You can even still have, like, ridiculous side missions. I would obviously do it a lot better than the way they did because I finally picked up Legends about 2 years ago and finally started playing it because I just had that itch where I was just like, okay, I had beaten whatever the last one, the retro one that they did was like Mega Man 11, and which those 8-bit ones were great. All the redone ones. I think those are... You don't like those?
I was just coughing.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just...
Not everything is a slight, right?
Okay. I've heard it all. So, yeah, anyways. On that note, though, I genuinely thought that those were good games.
I'm sick. I'm sorry.
No, Brad is too. I feel like everyone's getting a little sick. It's that time of year, I guess. But I thought that, the 8-bit ones were good, but I had that itch for something that was a little bit more free-flowing with the movement. So I was like, all right, fine, I'm going to give Legends a try. So I got it for like $5 off of the PlayStation Store, and the game is so, staticky, blocky. Half the time I go into a room and like he would just get stuck there. Like the game would literally freeze, and I was just so mad at the game. Like it actually ruined my excitement for it. But when I saw Pokemon get their Switch version, which was very much reminiscent of the old stuff, but just kind of given that new 3D dynamic, I was like, you could totally do that with Mega Man. It doesn't have to be massive cityscape or anything like that. You could literally just have him going through the same levels he did in, Mega Man 1 or 2 or 3, whichever one you want to pick, and then just have him fight the bosses, but just give it that kind of third-person perspective instead of the top-down 8-bit or 16-bit, whichever one you want to pick, look to it, and I would love to see that. even my favorite thing from the kids, cartoon version, which was to have him beat the guy, have him fall over to the side, and then like put his arm on the other guy's arm and like see the power go into his brain. Like I always geeked out over that. Like, oh, holy crap, he's got his power and now he can shoot a flamethrower or whatever. The ability to take on that sort of dynamic would be just really cool. And I would love to see that. And I would absolutely pay $70, $100 just to get that game in my possession. But that is all I've ever wanted, really. And I think that is a great place to call it for this week's episode. Thank you to everyone who listened to this week. Thank you for all the downloads last week, everyone. I would also like to thank Eric. Where can they find you, Eric?
We are on Twitter at @crossover_U. All O's are zeros. Any form of streaming media, we're there. We're trying to get on Spotify. We're waiting on a big update, but we should be there soon.
Awesome.
It's all under Crossover University.
I was watching you guys the other day on Twitch. What is your Twitch channel again?
So that one's a little bit of a debate because Anthony runs the Twitch, but he's leaving the show after the next episode.
Sorry to see you go, Anthony.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, it happens. We've been there.
We created a new one. It's the same as our username, just @crossover_U. All O's are zeros.
Oh, okay. Sure. Any other destinations that people can find you at?
We're on YouTube under the same name as well. If anyone's going to be in Atlanta for Dragon Con, 2 of us will be there as well, if you want to say hi.
Actually, we might be. Well, myself and my girlfriend might be down there, so we'll see about this year. But that would be awesome if we could run into you guys down there.
Yeah, me and Al will be there for the weekend to cover. We're doing press for the show.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I've never been. I've heard nothing but good things. But maybe you guys can give us some pointers or show us around.
It is a party.
That's what I've heard. So that'll be good.
It's 5 hotels and nonstop partying. That's all that con is.
Awesome. Actually, I forgot to tell Brad this, but when we were at WonderCon, even though we had to go back the day that we did, one of our fans, who took the selfie with us or whatever, she's like, "Hey, are you going to come to the party?" I'm like, "What party?" And then she's like, "Oh yeah, well we all go to this hotel that's like down this way, and if you go there, like everyone just goes crazy. There's parties, there's sex, and there's all kinds of stuff." And I'm like, "Well, I'm here with my girlfriend. I don't think she wants to get involved in like some 3-way or something like that." But I was like, "Thanks for the offer, but we got to get back." And it was a nice gesture, I guess. But parties are interesting.
Can I show one more thing?
Yeah, sure, of course.
I'm trying to do a movement. If you can try to get your fans involved, we're trying to get Kyle Ebert, the American voice actor of Adult Gohan from Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, okay.
We want to get him to officiate our wedding for me and my fiance.
We will try and get some sort of hashtag or whatever going. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
We've spoken with him before, and he was super nice. But we're trying to push with this. We're as many people we can get on Twitter to push him towards this.
That would be so cool. I would love to see like a video of that put up on YouTube or something. That would be the best. Yeah. So, let's make this happen, guys. Totally. Okay, so our usual plugs, all the stuff you guys probably already know, but for those of you who don't, you guys can find us at the Nerd Rage Pod on Twitter. That's probably the best way to communicate with myself and or Brad. You can always hit us up for any questions you might have, maybe more private ones, or if you guys want us to promote your products, like we mentioned with Vita Nourish, that water company that's going to be sending me a case, and we'll talk to you guys more about that next week. If you guys want to hit us up with any sort of thing like that, you can always hit us up on our our Gmail, which is nerdragepod@gmail.com. You can find us pretty much anywhere podcasts are, but if you want a specific destination where all of our stuff is, you can go to nerdragepod.libsyn.com for all of our episodes, past, present, and soon to come. Trying to think of what else. Support the Patreon if you guys can. Even $1 helps us, get a little bit further. And
if you want to go to Audible, you can use our trial.
There you go. Yeah, throw that in there.
Nah, I'm good.
Oh, okay.
We're actually not with them anymore.
Oh, really? See, someone told me do Audible, but that actually
we did it for a while.
Okay. That brings me to our next part. Please go and click on either of our links, whether it's on Twitter or on Facebook. If you make any purchase on Amazon, after making a click on that link, we will get a 10% cut off of whatever you purchase, and it will go to support the show. So we always appreciate when you guys are buying computers or iPods or whatever you're getting, because, you know, it just helps us out. So, and lastly, I always forget to do this, but I finally remembered this week. Go to our TeePublic site. We've got our shirts and all of our merchandise on there. You can get our stuff turned into like stickers, and I think someone said buttons was on there as of last week or whatever. So you can get all sorts of Nerd Rage stuff on there. And let us know if you want any more designs. Now that Amanda is here in the new place with us, she's going to be making up some new logos. I know Brad's hard at work on one. Brad, you shared one on Instagram, right?
It's kind of like I don't know, what do you call it?
It's a banner. It's a banner.
Prototype.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, but it looks really good. I was going to keep it under wraps, and then you posted on your Instagram. I was like, you know what? We're going full force with this one, and I think it looks awesome. Do you have a... Oh, man. Are you putting any more steps into it, or are you finishing touches on it right now?
No, I kind of took a step back from it just for just kind of see what the reaction or like the feedback would be.
I had my doubts at first, but I showed it to Amanda, and we both agree that it looks awesome. And I can't wait to see what next thing you're going to do, because there are some other stuff we have under wraps that I know that you're working on. So I can't wait to see what those turn out to be too. But that's it for this week. For myself, I'm
Brad Learman.
And
I'm Eric.
and we will see you guys another time.